Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Nightmare Narratives. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Harold Thompson, but everyone calls me Hank. I'm 44 years old, and I work as a park ranger here in North Carolina. Most folks think it's a quiet job, and it used to be. That was before the summer of 1954, when things started getting strange around Lumber River State Park. I live alone in a small cabin near the tobacco farms. After what I saw in the war, I wanted peace and quiet. No loud noises, no surprises. Just me, the trees, and the sound of wind through the leaves. It was perfect for a man trying to forget. But peace never lasts, does it? It started with the crops. I was walking through Old Man Henderson's tobacco field one morning when I noticed something odd. The plants were growing in perfect circles. Not just any circles, they were glowing with a soft green light that hurt your eyes if you looked too long. That's not natural, I said to myself, kneeling down to touch one of the plants. The leaves felt warm, like they had fever. Henderson found me there an hour later. "Strange, ain't it?" he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Been like this for 3 weeks now, ever since those government folks came through with their fancy equipment." I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. "Government folks?" "Yeah, said they were testing the soil. Had these clicking machines and everything." Henderson spat into the dirt. "Tobacco's been my family's business for 50 years. Never seen anything like this." As I walked back toward my cabin, I noticed something else weird. The sundial in Henderson's yard was casting shadows in the wrong direction. The shadow pointed backward, toward yesterday instead of forward to tomorrow. I stood there for 10 minutes watching it, but the shadow never moved the right way. That's when I heard the dog. It was Henderson's old hound, Rex. He came running toward me, tail wagging like always. But something was wrong. Rex was running backward. His legs were moving forward, but his body was going backward. And the whole time, he kept staring right into my eyes. I felt cold all over. "Rex!" I called out. "Here, boy!" The dog stopped, still staring at me. Then he turned around, the normal way this time, and ran back to the house. But I could swear he was still watching me over his shoulder. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I got a call from Sheriff Morrison. "Hank, you need to come see this," he said. His voice sounded shaky. "We got another one." Another one. That meant another dead animal. In the past month, we'd found 12 farm animals that had died in the strangest way. They looked perfectly normal from the outside. No cuts, no bite marks, nothing broken. But when the vet opened them up, they were completely empty inside. No blood, no organs, nothing. Just hollow skin and bones. I drove to the Murphy farm where they'd found a cow this time. It was lying in the middle of a field, looking like it was just sleeping. But when I got close, I could smell something wrong. Not the usual smell of death. This was different. It smelled like old pennies mixed with tobacco. And underneath that, something else. Something that made my stomach turn. "Same as the others?" I asked Sheriff Morrison. He nodded. "Empty as a drum. Vet says he's never seen anything like it. It's like something sucked the life right out of her, but left the shell behind." I walked around the cow, looking for clues. That's when I noticed the ground. The grass around the animal was dead in a perfect circle, about 10 feet wide, and in the center of that circle, right under the cow, the earth was warm to the touch. "You feel this?" I asked the sheriff, putting my hand on the ground. He knelt down and touched the dirt. His eyes went wide. "That's not possible. It's been cold all week." As we stood there, I heard a clicking sound. Steady like a clock, but wrong somehow. I pulled out the old Geiger counter I'd bought from Army surplus. Don't ask me why I had it. Just something about all these strange happenings made me want to check for radiation. The clicking got faster as I moved the counter toward the dead cow. Much faster. "What's that thing saying?" Morrison asked. I looked at the numbers. My blood ran cold. "It's saying this whole area is radioactive. A lot. More than it should be." That night I sat on my porch, trying to make sense of it all. The glowing crops, the backward-running dog, the empty animals, and now radiation. It all started after those government people came through with their equipment. I was whistling an old marching song from the war, something we used to sing to, keep our spirits up, when I heard something that made me stop cold. From somewhere underground, something was whistling back. The same tune, but twisted somehow, wrong. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the sound. It was coming from an old storm cellar behind my cabin. A cellar I'd never seen before, even though I'd lived here 2 years. The door was made of thick metal, like something you'd see on a government building. And on the door, painted in red letters that looked fresh, were words in a language I didn't recognize. But underneath in English, someone had written, "When earth fire wakes the old blood hunger, night feeders rise from the deep places." I backed away from that cellar real fast, but as I turned to go back to my cabin, I could swear I heard something moving around down there, something big, something hungry, and that's when I knew whatever was happening to our animals, whatever was making the crops glow and the shadows point backward, it was just getting started. I couldn't sleep after finding that cellar. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that twisted whistling, so I did what I always do when the past comes knocking. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window. The thing is, I've seen strange things before. Back in Belgium, during the war, we saw things that didn't make sense. Dead men walking in the snow, shadows moving without bodies. But we were tired, hungry, scared. We told ourselves it was just our minds playing tricks. Now I'm starting to wonder if we were wrong. My hands shook as I lifted the glass. They always shake when I think about the war, about what happened in those woods near Bastogne, about why I'm here alive when better men than me are buried in foreign soil. I was the only one who made it out of my unit. 23 good soldiers, and I was the one who lived. Not because I was brave, not because I was smart, because I was a coward. When the Germans surrounded us, when the bullets started flying and my friends started dying, I did what came natural to me. I hid. Under the bodies of my dead friends, I lay still and quiet while they bled out on top of me. Tommy Morrison, the sheriff's younger brother, called my name as he died. Called for help, and I just lay there, covered in his blood, too scared to move. I still have his dog tags, still stained with blood that won't wash clean, no matter how hard I scrub. I wear them every day, like a reminder of what I am. The whiskey burned going down, but it didn't burn away the memories. Nothing ever does. 3 days later, I got another call from Sheriff Morrison. "Hank, we need to talk," he said. "Found something you need to see." I met him at his office. He looked tired, older than his 50 years. The strange happenings were getting to all of us. "Remember those government folks Henderson mentioned?" he asked, spreading papers across his desk. "Well, I did some digging, called some friends in Raleigh. Turns out they weren't just testing soil." I leaned forward to look at the papers. They were covered in official stamps and big words I didn't understand. But I could make out enough to get the idea. They were testing nuclear stuff, Morrison continued. Something called the Manhattan Project. Same folks who made the bombs we dropped on Japan. My blood went cold. Nuclear testing? Here? Underground. Miles of tunnels and chambers, all hidden beneath our farms. They've been doing it for months, maybe years. He pointed to a map with red circles drawn on it. "Look at this. Every single place we found a dead animal is directly above one of these test sites." I studied the map. The pattern was clear. The empty animals, the glowing crops, the radiation readings, they were all connected to whatever the government was doing underground. There's more, Morrison said quietly. I talked to some of the local Lumbee folks, the old-timers. They remember stories their grandparents told them, stories about things that lived in the deep places, things that fed on blood and life force. They say these creatures have been sleeping for hundreds of years, waiting for something to wake them up. And you think this nuclear testing woke them up? He nodded. The Lumbee have a word for it. They call it earth fire. They say when the earth fire burns too bright, it calls to the blood-hungry things that sleep in darkness. That night, I walked through the woods near my cabin. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping to find answers. Maybe I was just tired of being afraid all the time. The trees looked different in the moonlight. They leaned away from certain spots, like they were trying to get away from something underground. My old army compass spun wildly, unable to find north. And everywhere I walked, I heard that same clicking sound my Geiger counter made. I was following a deer trail when I saw the lights. Not regular lights. These were green and cold coming from beneath the ground. They pulsed like a heartbeat, getting brighter and dimmer in a steady rhythm. As I got closer, I could smell that same penny and tobacco smell from the dead animals. But stronger now. So strong, it made my eyes water. That's when I heard the voice. It was soft, almost like a whisper, but it was coming from everywhere at once. The trees, the ground, the air itself. Harold, it said. Harold Thompson. I stopped walking. My heart was beating so hard I thought it might burst. I know you, Harold. I know what you did in the war. I know about Tommy Morrison. I know about the others. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Who's there? I called out. You left them to die, didn't you? Your friends, your brothers. You saved yourself and let them bleed out in the snow. The voice was getting closer, more real. I could feel breath on my neck, cold as winter wind. But I understand, Harold. Survival is everything. The strong live, the weak die. It's the oldest law in the world. I finally found my voice. What do you want? What I've always wanted. What I've been waiting for, sleeping in the deep places while the world forgot about me. I want to feed. And thanks to your government's earth fire, I'm finally awake enough to hunt again. I turned around, but there was nothing there, just trees and shadows, and that green light pulsing beneath my feet. You and I are alike, Harold. We both know how to survive. We both know that sometimes staying alive means letting others die. I ran then. Ran like I should have run in Belgium. Ran like I should have run when I first saw those glowing crops. But as I ran, I could hear it laughing behind me. A sound like wind through broken glass. When I got back to my cabin, I locked every door and window, but I knew locks wouldn't keep it out. Whatever was down there in those tunnels, whatever the government had awakened with their atomic testing, it knew me now. It knew my name, my face, my shame, and worst of all, it knew I was just like it, a survivor who would do anything to stay alive, even if it meant watching others die. I poured another glass of whiskey and sat by the window, watching the green lights pulse beneath the ground. Something was coming, something hungry and patient and ancient, and I was the only one who knew it was awake. The next morning I woke up on my kitchen floor. The whiskey bottle was empty beside me, and my head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer. But I remembered everything. The voice in the woods, the creature that knew my name, the green lights under the ground. I needed answers. Real answers. I drove to the county library in town. The librarian, Mrs. Patterson, gave me a strange look when I asked for newspapers from the past year. She was probably wondering why a park ranger needed to read old news stories, but she brought me a stack of papers anyway. I started looking for anything about government activity in our area. Most of it was boring stuff, road repairs, new farm programs, things like that. But then I found something that made me sit up straight, a small article from 6 months ago. The headline read, "Government scientists study local soil quality." The story was short, Just a few lines about how federal researchers were checking farmland for agricultural improvements. But what caught my eye was the scientist's name, Dr. Robert Crimson from the Atomic Energy Commission. Atomic Energy Commission. The same people who built the bombs. I asked Mrs. Patterson if she had any books about atomic energy. She looked worried, but brought me 3 thick books. I spent the next 4 hours reading, and what I learned made my blood run cold. The government wasn't just making bombs anymore. They were doing something called Project Crimson, testing how atomic energy affected living things. Plants, animals, maybe even people. The books talked about radiation making creatures grow bigger, stronger, more dangerous. But there was something else, something the books only hinted at. Some scientists believed that atomic energy didn't just change living things, it woke up things that had been sleeping. Old things, dangerous things. I was reading about radiation effects when Mrs. Patterson tapped my shoulder. "Hank, there's someone here to see you." I looked up. A man in a black suit was standing by the door. He was tall and thin, with grey eyes that reminded me of winter mornings. He looked like government. "Mr. Thompson," he said, walking over to my table, "I'm Agent Collins, federal investigator. I understand you've been asking questions about recent activities in your area." I closed the book slowly. "Just trying to understand what's happening to our animals." He sat down across from me. "May I ask why you have a Geiger counter, Mr. Thompson? That's unusual equipment for a park ranger." So they knew about that. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Bought it surplus. Seemed useful for checking things." "My checking for what?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Radiation, which I've been finding a lot of lately." Agent Collins nodded slowly. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to tell you something that's classified. The reason I'm telling you is because I think you already know some of it and because we need your help." He leaned forward. 3 months ago, we lost contact with Underground Research Station 7. It's located directly beneath your area. 12 scientists and 6 security guards just gone. No radio contact, no emergency signals, nothing. What were they doing down there? Testing the effects of concentrated atomic energy on biological specimens. We were trying to understand how radiation changes living tissue." He paused. "What we found was that high levels of atomic energy can awaken certain entities that have been dormant for centuries." I felt like the room was spinning. Entities? Ancient predators, things that fed on life force long before humans existed. The atomic testing didn't create them, it woke them up, and once they're awake, they're very, very hungry. Collins pulled out a manila folder and spread photographs on the table. They showed the underground facility, long white hallways, scientific equipment, holding cells with thick glass walls. But in the last few photos, everything was destroyed. The hallways were covered in some kind of dark substance. The equipment was twisted and broken, and the holding cells were empty. "We call it the Beast of Bladenborough," Collins said quietly. "Based on local legends. But it's not what the legends say. It's much worse." "How much worse?" "It doesn't just kill, it drains everything. Blood, life force, even memories. The victims look normal on the outside, but inside they're completely hollow. And every time it feeds, it gets stronger and smarter." I thought about the empty animals we'd been finding. "How do you kill something like that?" Collins shook his head. "We don't know if you can. Every team we've sent down has disappeared. The creature seems to be able to read minds, predict movements. It's like it knows what we're going to do before we do it." "Then why are you telling me this?" "Because it's contacted you directly. That's never happened before. Usually it just hunts and feeds, but for some reason it's interested in you specifically." I thought about the voice in the woods, how it knew about my war service, about Tommy Morrison. Maybe it likes cowards. Collins looked confused, but he didn't ask what I meant. Instead, he pulled out another photograph. This one showed a pale, thin creature with long arms and black eyes. It looked almost human, but wrong in every way. "This was taken by our last security camera before it went dark," he said. "The creature can move faster than anything we've ever seen. It can become invisible by bending light around itself. And it can hypnotize victims just by looking at them." I stared at the photograph. The creature's eyes were completely black, like looking into deep water at night. Just seeing the picture made me feel cold and tired. "There's something else," Collins continued. "We've detected similar creatures waking up near other atomic test sites. Nevada, New Mexico, even some overseas locations. If we can't stop this one, others might start hunting too." The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, I asked, "What do you want me to do?" "Help us find it. You know these woods better than anyone, and for some reason it wants to communicate with you. Maybe we can use that." I looked at the photographs again. The empty hallways, the twisted metal, the creature's horrible black eyes. And if I say no, then it keeps feeding until there's nothing left alive in this county. And then it moves on to the next county, and the next. Collins put the photos back in the folder. "Mr. Thompson, this thing doesn't just want to survive, it wants to spread. And atomic energy has given it the power to do exactly that." I thought about Tommy Morrison's dog tags in my pocket, about all the good men who died while I lived. Maybe this was my chance to finally do something brave. "All right," I said. "I'll help you find it." Collins nodded. "Good, because according to our radiation detectors, it's been moving closer to town every night. And tonight, there's supposed to be a solar flare. Our scientists think that will make it even stronger." As we left the library, I could feel Mrs. Patterson watching us. She looked scared, like she knew something terrible was about to happen. And maybe she was right, because as we walked to Collins's black car, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. All the shadows were pointing the wrong way again, just like at Henderson's farm, just like everywhere the creature had been. We were running out of time. Collins drove me back to my cabin in his government car. The whole way there, neither of us talked much. What was there to say? We were hunting something that had already killed trained soldiers and scientists, something that could read our minds and move faster than we could see. When we got to my place, Collins pulled out a metal case from his trunk. Inside were weapons I'd never seen before. Guns that hummed with electricity, bullets that glowed with their own light. Atomic-powered. "Ammunition," he explained. "If regular bullets won't stop it, maybe these will." I picked up one of the guns. It felt warm in my hands, like it was alive. "You really think this will work?" "Honestly, I don't know, but it's all we have." We spent the next hour going over maps of the area. Collins showed me where the underground facility was located, right beneath the old Murphy farm, where we'd found that first empty cow. The entrance was hidden in a grove of pine trees about 2 miles from my cabin. "The creature comes out to hunt every night around midnight," Collins said. "It follows the same pattern. Starts at the facility, moves through the woods, then circles, back before dawn." I studied the map. What if we wait for it at the facility, catch it when it comes home? Too dangerous. The tunnels down there are like a maze. It knows every inch of them. We'd be trapped. Collins folded the map. Better to catch it in the open where we can see it coming. As the sun started to set, we took positions in the woods near the Murphy farm. Collins had brought night vision, equipment and motion detectors. We set up behind a fallen log, about 50 yards from where the creature usually appeared. The waiting was the worst part. It reminded me of the war, sitting in muddy foxholes while German patrols walked by. That same sick feeling in my stomach, that same racing heartbeat. Around 11 o'clock, the motion detector started beeping softly. Something was moving through the trees, but it was still too far away to see. "Remember," Collins whispered, "don't look directly into its eyes. That's how it hypnotizes people." I nodded, checking my weapon for the 10th time. The atomic bullets felt heavy in the clip. Then we heard it, a sound like wind through broken glass. The same laugh I'd heard before, but closer now, much closer. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Our breath came out in white puffs, even though it was a warm summer night. The motion detectors went crazy, beeping so fast they sounded like one long alarm. There, Collins pointed. I saw it moving between the trees. It was exactly like the photograph, but worse in person. Pale white skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Arms that were too long, hanging almost to the ground. And those eyes, completely black, like holes cut in the world. But the worst part was how it moved. Not walking, not running. It flowed like water, covering ground faster than anything should be able to move. "Take the shot," Collins whispered. I raised my gun, aimed, and pulled the trigger. The atomic bullet hit the creature in the chest, exploding in a burst of green light. For a moment, I thought we'd done it. The creature stumbled backward, making a sound like steam escaping from a boiler. But then it straightened up and looked right at us. Even though I tried not to meet its eyes, I couldn't help myself. Those black holes seemed to pull my gaze like magnets. Suddenly, I wasn't in the woods anymore. I was back in Belgium, lying, under the bodies of my dead friends. I could smell their blood, feel their weight pressing down on me. I could hear Tommy Morrison calling my name, begging for help. "Hank!" Collins was shaking me. "Snap out of it!" I blinked and found myself standing up, walking toward the creature. My legs were moving on their own, like I was sleepwalking. Ursinique, monster was waiting for me, arms spread wide like it wanted to give me a hug. Collins grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back. "Fight it! Don't let it in your head!" I shook myself, trying to break free from whatever the creature was doing to my mind, but it was hard. The thing's voice was in my thoughts, soft and understanding. "Come to me, Harold. You're tired of carrying all that guilt. I can take it away. I can take all the pain away." "No," I said through gritted teeth. "I won't let you." The creature tilted its head like it was curious. "You think you're being brave? You think this makes up for what you did in the war?" Collins fired his weapon. 3 atomic bullets hit the creature in rapid succession. Each one exploded like a small sun, lighting up the whole forest. The monster staggered but didn't fall. "Your bullets can't kill me," it said, still talking to me even though Collins was shooting at it. "I've been alive since before your species learned to make fire. I've survived ice ages and meteor strikes. Your little atomic toys just make me stronger." As if to prove its point, the bullet wounds started healing. The torn flesh grew back together, like it was made of clay. Within seconds, there wasn't even a scar. "But you're different, Harold. You understand survival. You know what it means to do anything to stay alive." The creature took a step closer. "I could use someone like you, someone who isn't afraid to let others die." "He's trying to turn you," Collins said. "Don't listen to it." But part of me was listening, because the creature was right. I was a survivor. I'd lived through the war by being a coward. I'd come home while better men stayed buried in foreign ground. "Join me, Harold. Help me spread to other places, other countries. Think of it. No more wars, no more suffering. Just peace. The peace that comes when the feeding is done." I looked at Collins. He was reloading his weapon, but his hands were shaking. He was scared, and I didn't blame him. This thing was beyond anything we could fight. "What do you say, Harold? Will you help me bring peace to the world?" For a moment, just a moment, I almost said yes. It would be easy. No more guilt. No more nightmares. Just the simple truth of survival. But then I thought about Tommy Morrison, about Sheriff Morrison, who would lose another brother if this thing reached town. About all the innocent people who would die if I gave up now. "No," I said. "I won't help you." The creature's expression changed. The fake kindness disappeared, replaced by something cold and hungry. "Then you'll feed me instead." It moved faster than lightning. 1 second it was 20 feet away, the next it was right in front of me. its long fingers wrapped around my throat, and I felt something draining out of me, not just blood, something deeper, my memories, my strength, my will to live. Collins kept shooting, but the bullets passed right through the creature now. It had become like smoke, solid enough to hold me, but too thin for bullets to hurt. I was getting weaker by the second. My vision started to blur, and my legs gave out. The creature held me up effortlessly, drinking my life like water. "Don't worry, Harold," it whispered. "Soon you'll be empty, just like all the others, and then I'll visit your friends in town, starting with that sheriff who looks so much like your dead friend Tommy." That's when I got angry, really angry, for the first time since the war. I still had one atomic bullet left in my pocket, a spare Collins had given me. With the last of my strength, I pulled it out and jammed it right into the creature's mouth. "Choke on that," I gasped. The bullet exploded inside the creature's head. Green fire poured out of its eyes and mouth. It let go of me and stumbled backwards, screaming like a broken siren. But even as it burned, I could see the wounds starting to heal again. We'd hurt it, maybe even slowed it down, but we hadn't killed. The creature looked at me with pure hatred. "You cannot stop me, Harold. I am eternal. I am hunger itself. And when I'm done with this place, I'll find other places, other worlds." Then it melted back into the shadows and was gone. Collins helped me to my feet. I felt hollow, like something important had been torn out of me, but I was alive. "We need to get out of here," he said. "It'll be back, and next time it won't try to recruit you." As we stumbled back toward his car, I realized something terrible. The creature had mentioned other worlds, other places. This wasn't just about our town or even our country. This was about everywhere, and we were the only ones who knew. Collins drove us back to town as fast as he could. I sat in the passenger seat, trying to stop my hands from shaking. The creature had taken something from me when it grabbed my throat. I felt older, weaker, like I'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. "We need to evacuate the town," Collins said. "Get everyone out before it comes back." I shook my head. "It won't work. That thing moves too fast. It'll catch people on the roads. Pick them off one by one." "Then what do you suggest?" I was quiet for a long time, thinking. The creature was too strong for bullets, too smart for traps. It could heal from any wound and turn invisible when it wanted to. But there was one thing it had said that stuck with me. "It mentioned other worlds," I said finally. "Like it came from somewhere else." "What are you thinking? What if it's not really from here? What if the atomic testing didn't just wake it up but brought it here? Like it was attracted by the radiation?" Collins slowed the car down. "You mean it feeds on atomic energy?" "Maybe. Think about it. Every place we found it, the radiation was higher. The glowing crops, the warm ground, even my equipment. It's all connected to atomic power." We pulled into the sheriff's station. Sheriff Morrison was waiting for us, along with 3 other men I didn't recognize. They all had the same look as Collins, government people. "Any luck?" Morrison asked. Collins shook his head. "We hurt it, but didn't stop it. And it's planning something bigger than just our town." I told them about my theory, that the creature fed on atomic energy like a plant feeds on sunlight. The government men exchanged looks. "That would explain why it's getting stronger," one of them said. "Every nuclear test, every atomic power plant, every bomb we detonate, it's all feeding this thing." "And feeding others like it," Collins added. "We've got reports of similar creatures appearing near test sites in Nevada and New Mexico. If this one escapes to other populated areas, it'll be like dropping seeds," I finished. "Each one will spread to new places, make new creatures." Sheriff Morrison poured himself a cup of coffee with hands that shook slightly. "So what do we do? How do you kill something that eats the same energy we use to kill it?" That's when I had an idea. A terrible, final idea. "What if we don't try to kill it?" I said quietly. "What if we give it what it wants?" Everyone stared at me. "Hear me out," It feeds on atomic energy, right? And it gets stronger every time it eats. But what if we gave it too much? What if we fed it so much atomic energy that it, I don't know, burned itself out? Collins frowned. You're talking about a nuclear explosion that would destroy everything for miles. Not everything. Not if we do it right. I pulled out the map of the underground facility. Look, the tunnels go down almost a quarter mile. If we could get a nuclear device down there, set it off in the deepest part, the explosion would be contained underground, one of the government men said, understanding. Most of the radiation would be trapped in the rock, and the creature would be at the center of it, I continued. It wouldn't be able to resist that much atomic energy. It would have to feed, and maybe, just maybe, it would take in more than it could handle. Sheriff Morrison set down his coffee cup. Where would we get a nuclear device? Collins was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out a phone and made a call. I could only hear his side of the conversation, but I got the idea. There were weapons stored at a military base 2 hours away. Small ones meant for testing. They can have one here by dawn, he said after hanging up, but someone would have to carry it down into the tunnels. We all knew what that meant. Whoever went down there wouldn't be coming back up. I'll do it, I said. Hank, no, Sheriff Morrison started. Yes, it has to be me. I looked around the room at their faces. That thing knows me. It's been talking to me, trying to turn me. If anyone else goes down there, it'll just kill them outright. But me? It'll want to talk first, and that might give me enough time to set off the bomb. Collins shook his head. It's suicide, maybe. But if I don't do this, how many more people die? How many more of these creatures wake up? I thought about Tommy Morrison, about all the soldiers who died while I lived. I've been running from my cowardice for 10 years. Maybe it's time I finally did something brave. The nuclear device arrived just as the sun was coming up. It was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a suitcase. The technician who brought it showed me how to arm it. 30-minute timer, he said. Enough time to get deep into the tunnels, but not enough time to get back out. As we drove to the Murphy farm, I kept thinking about Tommy Morrison, about the promise I'd made to his brother to keep people safe, about all the mistakes I'd made and all the chances I'd missed to be better than I was. The entrance to the underground facility was hidden behind a false wall of rock. Collins and his men had found it during the night. It opened onto a metal staircase that disappeared into darkness. You sure about this? Collins asked as I strapped the bomb to my back. No, but I'm going anyway. I started down the stairs. They went down a long way, hundreds of steps cut into solid rock. The walls were covered with pipes and cables, all humming with electric power. My Geiger counter was clicking so fast it sounded like rain on a roof. At the bottom, I found the facility. It was exactly like the photographs Collins had shown me, but worse. The hallways were covered with something dark and sticky. The air smelled like copper pennies and old meat. And everywhere there were signs of violence, broken equipment, torn metal, stains on the walls that I tried not to think about. I followed the main corridor toward the center of the complex. According to the maps, that's where the main reactor was located. If I was going to set off a nuclear explosion, that seemed like the right place to do it. I was halfway there when I heard its voice. Hello, Harold. I turned around. The creature was standing behind me, looking exactly as it had in the woods. But something was different. It seemed more solid now, more real. The atomic energy down here was making it stronger. I wondered when you'd come to visit, it said, walking closer, though I didn't expect you to bring such a lovely gift. It was looking at the bomb on my back. You think that little device will hurt me? The creature laughed. Harold, I've been waiting centuries for someone to feed me that much atomic energy at once. You're not here to kill me. You're here to make me a god. My heart sank. I'd been wrong. The explosion wouldn't destroy it. It would make it powerful enough to leave. this place, to spread anywhere it wanted. But I appreciate the gesture, the creature continued. It shows you finally understand. Survival isn't about being brave or noble. It's about doing whatever it takes to stay alive, even if it means feeding your enemies. I reached for the timer on the bomb, but the creature moved faster than I could see, its long fingers wrapped around my wrist. Not yet, Harold. First, let me show you what your gift will accomplish. Suddenly, I could see what it saw. Images flooded my mind. The explosion spreading the creature's essence across the globe. New creatures rising from every atomic test site. Humanities. Cities empty and hollow. The planet itself drained of life. Beautiful, isn't it? The creature whispered. And it's all thanks to you. But then I saw something else. Something the creature didn't want me to see. When the explosion happened, when all that atomic energy was released at once, it wouldn't just make the creature stronger. It would tear holes in reality itself, holes that led to the spaces between atoms, the places where things like this creature lived. And if those holes opened, if the barriers between worlds broke down, then creatures far worse than this one would come through. Things that made the beast of Bladenborough look like a house cat. You're not just trying to take over our world, I said. You're trying to open the door for others. The creature's grip tightened on my wrist. Very good, Harold. Yes, your little atomic age has created perfect conditions for an invasion. All we needed was someone foolish enough to detonate a nuclear device in the right place. I looked around. The reactor room. The walls were covered with gauges and controls, all of them glowing with their own light. This wasn't just a bomb I was carrying. It was a key that would unlock doors that should never be opened. But I have to thank you, the creature said. Without your cowardice, without your desperate need to finally be a hero, none of this would be possible. That's when I understood. This whole thing, the creature talking to me, trying to recruit me, even fighting me in the woods, it had all been leading to this moment. It had been manipulating me from the beginning, playing on my guilt and fear, making sure I would eventually bring it exactly what it needed. I was still a coward, still making the wrong choice. But maybe, for once, I could be wrong in the right way. Instead of setting the timer for 30 minutes, I set it for 30 seconds. "What are you doing?" the creature demanded, tightening its grip until I thought my bones would break. Something I should have done a long time ago, I said. "I'm not running away." I pressed the button. The creature screamed, a sound like every window in the world breaking at once. It tried to drain me, to steal my life force before the bomb went off, but I fought back. For the first time in my life, I fought back. "You cannot stop what's coming," it shrieked. "Others will find a way. Others will open the doors." "Maybe," I said, "but not today, and not through me." The timer hit. 0. The last thing I saw was light, pure white light that erased everything else. And in that light I finally understood what Tommy Morrison had felt when he died calling my name. Not anger, not betrayal, forgiveness. The explosion tore through the underground facility and up into the morning sky. It created a crater half a mile wide and sent radiation readings spiking across 3 states. But it was contained, just like we'd hoped. The creature was destroyed, along with all the doors it had been trying to open. They say the radiation will fade in 100 years or so. They say the land will be safe again, eventually. But sometimes, late at night, people in the nearby towns report seeing green lights under the ground. And sometimes they hear voices calling their names, my voice among them, because part of me is still down there, mixed in with the atomic fire and broken rock. Part of me will always be there, watching and waiting, making sure that if anything else tries to use our world as a doorway, someone will be ready to stop it. I finally found my courage. It just took the end of the world to bring it out. And maybe that's enough. My name's Bobby Sullivan, and I wish I'd never come to this godforsaken swamp. I'm 29 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was a cop back in Little Rock. Not anymore, though. Can't be a cop when you've taken dirty money, even if it was just once. Even if you told yourself it was to help your sick mother pay her hospital bills. Once you cross that line, there's no going back. The day I saw my partner Jimmy plant drugs in that young father's car, I should have said something. Should have stopped him, but I didn't. I just stood there like a coward while an innocent man got arrested, while his kids watched their daddy get dragged away in handcuffs. That image haunts me every night. So here I am now, working as a ranger in the Wichita National Forest. Figured maybe working in nature, away from all the corruption and lies, might help me find some peace, maybe even help me sleep at night without seeing that little girl's face when they took her father away. The swamp is beautiful, I'll give it that. Spanish moss hangs from the cypress trees like old curtains, and the water is so still, it looks like a dark mirror. When I paddle my canoe through here, it's the only time my mind goes quiet. The only time I don't hear Jimmy's voice telling me to just look the other way, Bobby, just this once. But today, something felt different. I was paddling through the main channel, enjoying the bird songs, when I noticed something strange. The birds were singing, but it sounded wrong. Like they were singing backwards, like someone had recorded their songs and played them in reverse order. It made my skin crawl. Then I saw the turtle. It surfaced right next to my canoe, this big old snapping turtle with a shell covered in moss. But when it looked at me, I swear it had human eyes. Smart eyes, like it was studying me, trying to figure out what I was doing here. Then it just sank back down without making a single ripple in the water. That's when I knew something was very wrong. I'd been getting reports all week about some kind of animal attack. A family camping near the water had their tent destroyed, but here's the weird part. Everything was soaked, like it had been hit by a flood. But we hadn't had rain in weeks, and the nearest river was 5 miles away. How does a tent get that? Much water damage in the middle of dry land? The smell hit me next. At first it smelled like summer rain, fresh and clean. But underneath that was something else, something that had been dead for a very long time. The kind of smell that gets in your nose and won't leave. I tried to ignore it and kept paddling, but then the Spanish moss started moving. There wasn't any wind, the air was completely still. But those long grey strands were reaching toward me like fingers trying to grab hold of my canoe. Without thinking, I started humming, just an old song my dad used to sing when I was little. But as soon as the sound left my mouth, something big moved under the water. Something that made waves without breaking the surface. That's when I really started paying attention to the trees around me. These old cypress trees had marks on them, high up on their trunks. Water marks, like they'd been flooded before, but way higher than any normal flood could reach. The weird thing was, there hadn't been any major floods in this area for years. I pulled out my tackle box to get some fishing line, hoping to catch something normal, something that would make sense. But when I opened it, I realized I'd packed all wrong. Instead of just fishing gear, I had evidence bags in there. Old habit from my cop days, I guess. Even out here in the middle of nowhere, I was still thinking like a detective. As I sorted through my gear, I noticed something carved into the trunk of a nearby cypress tree. The cuts were deep and old, but I could still make out the words. Where water spirits sleep, white man's machines wake old anger. Cherokee warning, had to be. This whole area used to be Cherokee land before the government took it away from them. I should have turned around right then. Should have paddled back to the ranger station and filed a report about the strange things I was seeing. But something kept pulling me deeper into the swamp. Maybe it was my old cop instincts, or maybe it was guilt driving me forward. I'd failed to protect people before. Maybe this was my chance to do the right thing for once. My father's old police badge was heavy in my shirt pocket. I'd been carrying it since the day I quit the force, hoping someday I'd find a way to honor it again, to be the kind of cop he was, honest, brave, someone who protected people instead of looking the other way. The sun was getting lower, turning the water golden, but somehow that made everything feel more dangerous instead of peaceful. Shadows were getting longer, and every sound seemed louder than it should be. I took a long drink from my flask. Whiskey helped quiet the voices in my head, the ones that kept reminding me what a failure I was. But even the alcohol couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from beneath the dark water. I found the house just as the sun started to set, or what was left of it anyway. The family's campsite was about 2 miles deeper into the swamp, on a little piece of dry land surrounded by water. But when I got there, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The tent was completely destroyed. Not torn up like a bear would do it, but crushed flat like something huge had stepped on it. And everything, the sleeping bags, the cooler, the camping chairs, everything was soaking wet, dripping wet, like it had just been pulled out of a lake. But here's the thing that really got to me. We were on high ground. The water was at least 10 feet below where this campsite was set up. There was no way floodwater could have reached this spot. I called out, but nobody answered. The family had already been rescued and taken to the hospital. Lucky for them, they got out alive. I started looking around, trying to make sense of what happened. That's when I saw the trucks. 3 big Army Corps of Engineers vehicles were parked about 100 yards away, hidden behind some trees. What were they doing out here? This was supposed to be protected forest land. I walked over to get a closer look, and that's when I saw the equipment. Huge drilling machines, water pumps, and containers full of chemicals I couldn't even pronounce. There were papers scattered around one of the trucks, so I picked them up. What I read made my blood run cold. They were building a dam, not just any dam, but one that would flood this entire area. And according to these papers, they'd already started. The construction had been going on for months, and they were dumping chemicals into the water to prepare the area for flooding. One page showed a map of the land they were going to flood. It included something called Sacred Cherokee Burial Ground, Site 7. Someone had written, "Ignore tribal protests," in red ink across the top. I kept reading. The chemicals they were using weren't just for construction. They were experimental, stuff the military had developed but never tested. They were using this place like a giant test tube, and nobody was supposed to know about it. My hands were shaking as I read more. There were reports of unusual wildlife behavior and unexplained water disturbances going back 3 months. Every report ended the same way. Local authorities paid to classify as swamp gas hallucinations. That hit me like a punch in the gut. Local authorities. They were bribing cops, just like Jimmy used to take bribes back in Little Rock. The corruption followed me even here. I took some water samples from a puddle near the destroyed campsite. I had a basic testing kit in my ranger gear. Nothing fancy, but good enough to check for basic chemicals. The results were impossible. The water was full of stuff that doesn't exist in nature, industrial chemicals, but mixed with something else, something organic that the kit couldn't identify. That's when I heard the sound. It started low, like a truck engine far away, but it was coming from the water. I walked to the edge of the land and looked down at the dark swamp below. The water was moving, not flowing like a river, but moving. Like something big was swimming just under the surface, something that made waves without coming up for air. I pulled out my phone to call for backup, but there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. We were too deep in the swamp. The sound got louder. It wasn't mechanical anymore. It sounded like crying, like someone drowning but angry about it, like a roar mixed with the sound of water filling up lungs. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it on the water. For just a second, I saw eyes, big, glowing eyes, staring back at me from about 20 feet down. Then they disappeared. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode. I'd seen a lot of scary things as a cop, but this was different. This felt old, ancient, like whatever was down there had been waiting for a very long time. I found more papers near the army trucks, reports from Cherokee elders talking about water guardians and spirits that protect sacred places. The army had interviewed them months ago, then marked all their statements as primitive superstition. But there was one quote that stuck. With me, an old Cherokee man named Joseph Crowfeather had told them, when you poison the sacred water, when you drown the sleeping ancestors, the guardian will wake up. And when it wakes up, it will make the water remember every evil thing done to it. The army's response was typed at the bottom. Recommend increased bribes to local law enforcement to suppress indigenous concerns. I was so angry I wanted to scream. These people were destroying a sacred burial ground, poisoning the water, and paying off cops to keep quiet about it. Just like back in Little Rock, people with power were hurting innocent people and getting away with it. But this time, something was fighting back. I heard the sound again, closer now. Whatever was in the water was moving toward me. I could see ripples spreading out in perfect circles, getting bigger and bigger. I should have run right then. Should have gotten back in my canoe and paddled as fast as I could back to the ranger station. But I couldn't move, because floating in the water just a few feet from shore was a police badge. My father's badge, the one I'd been carrying in my pocket. Somehow it had fallen out and was now glowing softly in the dark water, like it was calling to me. The thing that came out of the water wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. At first, I thought it was just a big cypress tree that had somehow gotten loose and was floating toward me. It was covered in moss and mud, about 8 feet tall, moving slowly through the dark water. But then it stood up. It rose out of the swamp like a mountain coming to life. Water poured off its body like a waterfall. Its arms were as thick as tree trunks, and when it opened its mouth, I heard that drowning sound again, but louder, angrier. I couldn't move. My whole body just froze up, like when you have a really bad nightmare and can't wake up. The creature looked right at me with those glowing eyes. They weren't animal eyes. They were old, sad, full of pain that had been building up for years and years. Then something incredible happened. I started seeing things that weren't there. Or maybe they were there, just not in the present. I saw this same swamp, but different, cleaner. There were Cherokee people living here, fishing in the clear water, burying their dead on the high ground with respect and ceremony. The water was sacred to them. It was pure. Then the vision changed. I saw machines coming, big bulldozers and dump trucks. I watched them tear down the trees and dump chemicals into the water. I saw the Cherokee graves disappearing under muddy water as the dam was built, and I felt the creature's anger. It wasn't just mad, it was heartbroken. This thing had been sleeping under the water for hundreds of years, protecting this place, and now it was watching everything it loved get destroyed. The vision ended, and I was back in the real world, staring at this massive creature standing in the swamp. It took a step toward me, and the water around its feet began to rise. Not flowing up from the swamp, but rising up from nothing, like the creature was making it appear out of thin air. That's when I realized what I was really looking at. This wasn't just some monster. It was a guardian, a protector that had been awakened by all the poison and destruction. My father's badge was still floating nearby, still glowing. The creature looked at it, then back at me. And somehow I understood what it was thinking. It knew I was a cop, or used to be one. It knew I was supposed to protect people, just like it was supposed to protect this place. And it knew I had failed, just like it was failing now. I tried to back away, but my feet felt like they were stuck in mud. The creature moved closer, and now I could see it better in the moonlight. Its skin looked like tree bark, but it was breathing. Its hands had long fingers that ended in claws, but they moved gently, like it didn't want to hurt anything unless it had to. And its face, Its face looked almost human, almost sad. "I know what you are," I whispered, even though I was scared out of my mind. The creature stopped moving and tilted its head, like it was listening. "You're trying to protect this place, just like I was supposed to protect people back in the city." It made a sound then, not the drowning roar from before, but something softer, like wind through trees or water flowing over rocks. I took a step toward the water's edge. I know it sounds crazy, but I wasn't afraid anymore. This thing wasn't evil. It was just trying to do its job, same as me. "They're poisoning your home," I said. "The army people. They're putting chemicals in the water and covering up what they're doing." The creature's eyes got brighter, and the water around us started moving faster. It was getting angry again, but not at me. "I have proof," I said, holding up the papers I'd found. "I can show people what they're doing." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't enough. Who was going to believe me? Who was going to care about some Cherokee burial ground in the middle of a swamp? The people with power would just pay more bribes, make more threats, until everyone forgot about it, just like they always did. The creature must have seen the doubt in my face, because it started moving toward me again. But this time, it wasn't threatening. It was showing me something. The water around my feet began to glow with the same light as my father's badge. And suddenly I could see everything. I saw every person who had been hurt by the chemicals in the water. Fish dying by the thousands, birds falling out of the sky, Cherokee elders getting sick from drinking poisoned well water. I saw the army, officers laughing as they signed orders to dump more chemicals. I saw local cops taking money to look the other way. I saw politicians making deals to let it all continue, and I saw what was going to happen next. More families would come to camp here, more people would get hurt. The creature would keep trying to protect its home, but people would call it a monster. They'd hunt it down and kill it, and then there would be nothing left to stop the poison. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. The creature pointed at the water with one massive finger. My reflection was clear in the still surface. But there was something else there too. My father, in his police uniform, standing behind me. "You want me to do the right thing," I said, like he would have done. The creature nodded slowly. But then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Boat engines, coming this way fast. The creature heard them too. Its peaceful expression changed back to anger, and the water around us started churning like a washing machine. "They're coming back," I said. "The army people." 3 boats came around the bend, their spotlights cutting through the darkness. Men in military uniforms were pointing guns at us. "There it is," one of them shouted, "and there's the ranger. Take them both down." The creature roared, and the sound was so loud it made my ears ring. Then it did something I'll never forget. It looked at me one more time, and I swear I saw it smile. Not a scary monster smile, but a sad, kind smile, like it was saying goodbye. Then it dove back into the water and everything went crazy. The water exploded upward like a geyser. Waves as tall as houses came rushing toward the boats. The men were screaming and shooting their guns, but the bullets didn't seem to hurt the creature at all. One of the boats flipped over completely. Another one got caught in a whirlpool that appeared out of nowhere. And I was standing right in the middle of it all, somehow completely dry, watching the creature protect both of us the only way it knew. How? But I could tell it was getting tired. There were too many of them, and they had too many weapons. That's when I made my choice. I grabbed my father's badge from the water and started running toward the boats, waving the army papers in the air. "Stop shooting!" I yelled. "I'm a federal ranger. I have evidence of what you're doing here." It was the stupidest thing I could have done, but for the first time in years, it felt like the right thing. The creature's head came up out of the water, and it looked at me with something like respect. I woke up in the water, not on top of it, in it, completely underwater, but somehow I could still breathe. Or maybe I wasn't breathing at all. Everything felt strange and peaceful, like being in a dream. The creature was there with me, floating in the dark water like we were old friends. Its angry expression was gone. Now it just looked tired and sad. I tried to swim to the surface, but my body wouldn't move the right way. That's when I realized what had happened. I'd been shot. The army men had killed me when I tried to stop them. "Am I dead?" I asked, even though we were underwater. The creature nodded slowly. Then it did something amazing. It reached out and touched my forehead with one giant finger, and suddenly I could understand everything. I wasn't just dead. I was becoming part of the water, part of the guardian spirit that protected this place. And I could see everything that had ever happened here. I saw Cherokee children playing by the clean water hundreds of years ago. I saw their grandparents teaching them that water was sacred, that it held the spirits of everyone who had ever lived here. Then I saw the first white settlers come. Most of them were good people, just trying to build homes and raise families. But some of them didn't care about the Cherokee beliefs. They threw trash in the water and built factories upstream. I saw the government men come and force the Cherokee people to leave their sacred land. I watched families crying as they were marched away from the graves of their ancestors, and I saw the beginning of the poison. First just a little bit, from small factories. Then more and more as companies realized they could dump anything they wanted into water that nobody was protecting anymore. The guardian spirit had tried to stop them. For over 100 years, it had been trying to protect the water, but it was just one creature against thousands of people who didn't understand what they were destroying. Every time the water got more poisoned, the guardian got angrier and stronger, but also more desperate and sad. "You've been alone all this time," I said. The creature nodded again. Then it showed me something that made my heart break. I saw every person who had ever tried to help. Cherokee activists who fought to protect the burial grounds, scientists who tried to warn people about the chemicals, police officers who tried to investigate the corruption. All of them had been silenced, bought off, threatened, or just ignored until they gave up. "That's why you killed me," I said, "because I'm like all the others. I tried to help, but I failed." But the creature shook its head. It touched my forehead again, and this time I saw something different. I saw my father, the honest cop who never took a bribe in his life. I saw him teaching me right from wrong when I was just a little kid. I saw him telling me that sometimes doing the right thing is hard, but that's what makes it right. Then I saw myself as a young police officer, full of hope and wanting to make the world better. I saw the moment I took my first bribe and how it felt like dying inside. I saw every compromise I made after that, every time I looked the other way when I should have spoken up. But I also saw the moment I tried to stop the army men from shooting. I saw myself running toward danger to protect the creature and expose the truth. "You didn't kill me because I failed," I realized. "You killed me because I finally tried to do the right thing." The creature's sad eyes got a little brighter. Then it showed me one more vision. I saw what would happen next. The army would cover up my death, just like they covered up everything else. They would say I got lost in the swamp and drowned by accident. My body would never be found. The creature would keep protecting the water, but people would keep trying to destroy it. More chemicals would be dumped. More sacred places would be flooded. More innocent people would get hurt, unless someone could warn them. Someone who could see everything that was happening and find a way to get the truth out. "You want me to help you," I said. The creature nodded one final time. Then it began to change. Its body started dissolving into the water around us, becoming part of the swamp itself. But as it dissolved, I felt myself getting stronger. I could feel every drop of water in the entire forest. I could sense every fish, every bird, every tree that depended on this place. And I could feel every chemical, every poison, every lie that was hurting it all. But there was something else, a terrible understanding that came with this new power. I was trapped. I could see everything that was happening to the water, but I couldn't leave this place to warn anyone. I could protect the swamp from people who came here, but I couldn't stop the poison from being dumped upstream. I could know the truth about every cover-up, every bribe, every innocent person being hurt by the corruption, but I couldn't tell anyone about it. This was my punishment, not for taking bribes as a cop, but for staying silent when I should have spoken up. For all the times I chose the easy path instead of the right one, I would spend forever knowing about injustice, but being powerless to stop it. I would watch good people get hurt and bad people get away with it over and over again for as long as this water existed. And the worst part was, I understood that this was fair. This was justice. I had failed to protect people when I had the power to do it. Now I would know what it felt like to want to protect people, but not be able to. The creature, the guardian, was gone now. I was the guardian, and I was completely alone. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to swim away, but there was nowhere to go. The water was part of me now, and I was part of it. Above me, I could see the army boats leaving. They were laughing and joking, already planning how they would explain away my disappearance. In a few days, they would go back to dumping chemicals and destroying sacred places, and I would have to watch it all happen, knowing exactly how wrong it was, but unable to do anything except wait for the next person to come along. The next person who might try to do the right thing, the next person I would have to judge. My father's police badge sank slowly through the water toward me, still glowing with that soft light. When it reached my hand, I understood the final horrible truth. I wasn't just trapped here to watch injustice happen. I was trapped here to become part of it, to be the thing that people would fear and run from, instead of the thing that would protect them. Because that's what happens when good people fail to act when it matters. They don't just lose the chance to help. They become part of the problem they were supposed to solve. The badge felt heavy in my hand, heavier than it ever had when my father carried it. But I held onto it anyway. Maybe someday, someone would come who was braver than me, someone who wouldn't fail when it counted. Until then, I would wait in the dark water, carrying my father's badge and the weight of every wrong thing I couldn't make right. 3 weeks after I died, they found my empty canoe floating near the ranger station. I watched them find it. I watched everything now. The official report said I had gotten lost in the swamp and accidentally drowned. Tragic accident, they called it. Young ranger dies doing the job he loved. Nobody mentioned the army trucks. Nobody talked about the chemicals in the water. Nobody said anything about a creature protecting sacred Cherokee burial grounds. The local sheriff who wrote the report had just bought a new truck. Cash payment. I could see the guilt in his eyes every time he looked at the fake paperwork, but I couldn't do anything about it. My mother came to my funeral. She cried over an empty coffin while I watched from the bottom of the swamp, wanting so badly to tell her I was sorry. Sorry for the dirty money I took. Sorry for not being the son she raised me to be. Sorry for leaving her alone. But I couldn't speak to her. I couldn't speak to anyone. The army project continued exactly like they planned. Every night they dumped more chemicals into the water upstream. Every day the poison got stronger. And every day I felt it burning through the water that was now part of my body. Fish started dying by the hundreds. Their bodies floated to the surface, and the government scientists who came to investigate wrote reports saying it was natural causes. More cash payments, more lies. 2 months after my death, a Cherokee elder named Joseph Crow Feather came to the swamp. He was old and walked with a cane, but he came anyway. He stood at the water's edge and spoke in a language I somehow understood now. "I know you're in there, young man," he said quietly. "I know what happened to you, and I know you're scared and angry." I tried to respond, tried to make the water move or do something to show him I could hear, but nothing happened. I was powerless, just like always. My grandfather told me about the water guardian, Joseph continued. He said it had been alone for too long. Said it needed help, but help would come with a price. He pulled something out of his pocket. A small stone, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. "This won't free you," he said. "Nothing can do that. But maybe it will help you understand why you're here." He threw the stone into the water, and it sank slowly toward me. When it touched my hand, I saw one final vision. I saw the future. Years from now, decades maybe, a young woman would come to this swamp. She'd be a lawyer, fighting for Cherokee rights, investigating the same corruption that killed me. She'd be brave and honest, everything I should have been. And when the people in power tried to silence her, when they tried to make her disappear like they did to me, I would have a choice. I could let her die and become another guardian spirit, trapped forever like me. Or I could find a way to save her, even if it meant using up all the power I had left. "You're not here to be punished," Joseph said, like he could read my thoughts. "You're here to learn, to understand what it really means to protect people, and when the time comes, you'll know what to do." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Your father would be proud of you, Bobby Sullivan. You made the right choice in the end. That's more than most people can say." After he left, I was alone again. But something had changed. The crushing weight of my guilt felt a little lighter. The endless anger in the water felt a little calmer. Maybe Joseph was right. Maybe this wasn't just punishment. Maybe it was preparation. I thought about my father's badge, still glowing softly in my hand at the bottom of the swamp. He had carried it with honor his whole life, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Now it was my badge, my responsibility. And somewhere out there, someone who needed protecting was coming. Someone who would give me the chance to finally do the right thing, even if it cost me everything. I settled deeper into the dark water and waited. The corruption was still happening. The poison was still flowing. Good people were still getting hurt while bad people got rich. But for the first time since I died, I had hope. Because I knew something the corrupt officials and greedy companies didn't know. I knew that justice might be slow, and it might be strange, but it always finds a way, even if it has to come from the bottom of a dark swamp in Arkansas, even if it has to come from a failed cop who finally learned what it really means to serve and protect. I was ready to wait as long as it took. My name is Bobby Sullivan. I used to be a corrupt police officer. Then I was a forest ranger trying to find redemption. Now I'm something else entirely. I'm the guardian of the water, the protector of the forgotten, the one who watches and waits for the chance to make things right. And when that chance comes, I won't fail again. The badge in my hand pulsed with a gentle light, like a heartbeat, like a promise, like hope. The end. My name is Patricia Davis, but everyone calls me Patty. I'm 39 years old, and I work as a park ranger at Buffalo National River in Arkansas. Most people think I have a pretty good job, spending my days in the beautiful outdoors, helping visitors, keeping the trails safe. They're right about one thing. This place is beautiful. The limestone cliffs rise up like ancient walls, covered in green trees that change colors with the seasons. The river runs clear and cold, and on quiet mornings you can hear it singing over the rocks. But beautiful places can hold ugly secrets. And I should know, because I carry one of the ugliest secrets of all. 3 years ago, I wasn't a park ranger. I was a kindergarten teacher in Little Rock. I loved those kids like they were my own. Every morning, I'd watch their little faces light up when they learned something new. I taught them to tie their shoes, to spell their names, to be kind to each other. I was good at it too. The kids called me Miss Patty, and their parents trusted me with their most precious things. I had my own precious thing back then. Her name was Emma. She was 7 years old, with curly brown hair and eyes that sparkled when she laughed. Emma was the light of my world. She loved butterflies and ice cream and bedtime stories. She used to hum this little lullaby I taught her, a simple tune that went, "Sleep now, my darling, dream of tomorrow, Mama will keep all your troubles away." Emma died on a Tuesday night in March. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit our car while we were coming home from her dance class. I walked away with a few bruises. Emma didn't walk away at all. After that, I couldn't teach anymore. I couldn't look at other people's children and not think about mine. I couldn't hear their laughter without hearing Emma's voice mixed in. So, I quit. I moved away from Little Rock, away from the memories, away from everything that reminded me of the life I used to have. That's how I ended up here, in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, taking care of strangers who come to hike and camp and fish. It's quiet here, most of the time anyway. The limestone bluffs are the most beautiful part of this place. They stretch for miles along the river, carved by water and time into amazing shapes. Some look like castles, others like sleeping giants. The rock is white and grey, and when the sun hits it just right, it almost glows. There are caves everywhere, some big enough to walk through, others just dark holes in the cliff face. But here's the thing about limestone. It does funny things with sound. The rock is full of tiny holes and cracks, and when the wind blows through them, it makes music. Sometimes it sounds like singing, sometimes it sounds like whispers, and sometimes, if you're not careful, it sounds like children laughing. The first time I heard it, I was hiking the Ponca Trail, checking for fallen trees after a storm. It was a beautiful afternoon, sunny and warm, with just enough breeze to keep the bugs away. I was enjoying the peace when I heard it, the sound of kids playing, echoing off the cliffs. My heart stopped. For just a second, I thought Emma was there with me. I thought I heard her giggle mixed in with the others. I called out, thinking maybe there was a family hiking nearby that I hadn't seen. But nobody answered. The laughter just kept echoing, bouncing from cliff to cliff until I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I told myself it was just the wind, just the limestone playing tricks on my ears. But as I kept walking, I noticed something strange. The shadows on the ground didn't match the trees above them. They moved on their own, like they were dancing to music I couldn't hear. That's when I started to understand that this place was different, that maybe I hadn't found a quiet refuge after all. Maybe I'd found something else entirely, but I stayed anyway. Where else was I going to go? And besides, sometimes when the wind is just right and the sun hits the cliffs in that special way, I swear I can hear Emma humming her lullaby. Even if it scares me a little, it's the closest thing to having her back that I'll ever get. I just wish I had known then what was really making those sounds. I wish I had known what was waiting for me in those beautiful, terrible caves. The weird stuff started about 2 months after I heard that first laughter. At first, it was just small things that were easy to ignore. Campers would mention hearing strange sounds at night, kids crying in the distance, someone calling their name. When no one was around, I figured it was just the usual camping stories people tell to scare each other. But then the reports started getting stranger and more specific. Mrs. Henderson came to my office on a Thursday morning. She was an older woman, maybe 60, with gray hair and worried eyes. She'd been camping with her husband near Devil's Den Cave, one of the bigger limestone formations about 3 miles up the trail. "I need to tell someone," she said, sitting down across from my desk. Her hands were shaking. "My grandson died 2 years ago, leukemia. He was only 9. I felt my chest tighten. I knew where this was going and I didn't want to hear it. Last night I heard him calling for me," she continued, clear as day. "Grandma, help me. I'm lost, coming from inside that cave. My husband said I was dreaming, but I wasn't asleep. I was sitting right by the fire, wide awake." I gave her the standard response. Sound travels funny in the hills. Maybe it was another camper's child. Maybe it was an animal. But Mrs. Henderson just shook her head. "It was Tommy's voice," she said. "I raised that boy. I know his voice better than my own." After she left, I tried to forget about it. But then came Mr. Rodriguez the next week. His daughter had drowned in a swimming pool 3 years ago. He'd heard her laughing and splashing in the underground pools of Crystal Cave. Then came the Johnsons. Their son had died in Afghanistan. They heard him calling for backup from somewhere deep in the cliff walls. All of them had one thing in common. They'd lost a child, and they all heard their dead kids calling from inside the caves. I started keeping a list. Not officially, just notes in a small notebook I kept in my pocket. By the end of the month, I had 17 reports, all from parents who'd lost children, all hearing voices from inside the limestone caves. That's when I decided to investigate for myself. I started with Devil's Den Cave, where Mrs. Henderson had her experience. It's a big opening in the cliff face, large enough for a grown person to walk through comfortably. During the day, it's just a cool, dark hole in the rock. Nothing scary about it at all. But I went back at night. I brought a flashlight and my radio, told the night shift supervisor where I was going, just standard safety stuff. I thought I'd spend an hour or two listening, maybe put these weird reports to rest, once and for all. The cave was quiet when I got there. Not even the usual bat sounds you'd expect. Just deep, empty silence that seemed to swallow up my footsteps. I went about 50 feet in, far enough to be completely surrounded by limestone walls. That's when I heard it, a mockingbird, singing Emma's lullaby, the exact tune I used to sing to her every night before bed. Note for note, perfect pitch, my skin went cold. Mockingbirds copy sounds they hear, sure. But where would one learn Emma's lullaby? I was the only person who knew it. I made it up, myself when she was a baby. The singing was coming from deeper in the cave. I followed the sound, my flashlight beam dancing on the wet stone walls. The deeper I went, the clearer the song became. And then I heard something else underneath it. Whispers, lots of them, all talking at once. Children's voices all saying the same thing over and over. Help us, we're lost. Please come find us. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I dropped my flashlight and ran out of that cave as fast as my legs could carry me. The whispers followed me all the way to the entrance, getting louder and more desperate with each step. When I got back to my truck, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely start the engine. But before I drove away, I looked back at the cave entrance one more time. There were shapes moving in the darkness. Small shapes, about the size of children. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table and did some research on my laptop. I looked up the history of this area, the Native American stories, anything that might explain what I'd experienced. That's when I found the Cherokee warnings. They were carved into the walls of several caves throughout the area. Most people thought they were just old tribal markings, meaningless to modern visitors. But I found a translation in an old anthropology paper from the 1970s. The warnings all said the same thing. Where stone singers call the lost young, grief mothers hear what should stay buried. I read that line over and over, feeling sick too. My stomach, stone singers, that had to mean the caves, the way sound echoed through the limestone. Lost young, dead children, and grief mothers. Mothers who'd lost their kids, like me. The Cherokee had known something was wrong with these caves long before any of us ever got here. They'd tried to warn people, but nobody had listened. I was starting to think maybe we should have. The next morning I called my supervisor, Bob Martinez. He'd been running this park for 15 years, and if anyone knew about strange happenings in the caves, it would be him. "Bob, we need to talk," I said when he picked up the phone. "Something's going on with the caves. I've got reports from visitors, and I think we might have a safety issue." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Bob sighed. "Come to my office, Patty. There's some stuff you need to know." An hour later, I was sitting in Bob's cluttered office, looking at a pile of folders marked with official government seals, the kind of paperwork that makes your stomach drop when you see it. "This goes back to 1987, Bob said, pulling out the oldest folder. "The Army Corps of Engineers wanted to do some research in our cave systems. said it was about water flow and erosion patterns. He opened the folder and showed me maps of all the major caves in our area. But these weren't normal cave maps. They had equipment locations marked on them, lots of equipment. "What kind of research needs this much gear?" I asked, pointing to the symbols scattered throughout the cave drawings. "The kind that has nothing to do with water," Bob said grimly. "Keep reading." The next folder was from 1990. More equipment installations, but this time the paperwork mentioned something called HAARP. I'd heard of it before, some kind of radio wave research project up in Alaska. But what was it doing in Arkansas caves? "They were using our limestone formations as natural amplifiers," Bob explained. "The rock formations create perfect acoustic chambers. Sound goes in, gets bounced around, comes out louder and clearer than when it went in. But why would they want to amplify sound in the middle of nowhere?" Bob pulled out another folder. This one was marked classified in big red letters because they weren't just amplifying regular sound. They were working on something they called psychic frequencies, sounds that could affect people's minds. I felt cold. "What do you mean affect people's minds? Make them see things, hear things?" The government wanted to develop weapons that could drive enemy soldiers crazy without firing a shot. Bob's voice was quiet, like he was afraid someone might be listening. They figured if they could broadcast the right frequencies, they could make entire armies surrender by filling their heads with nightmares. He showed me page after page of technical reports. Most of it was way over my head, but I understood enough to get scared. The scientists had discovered that certain sound frequencies could trigger very specific emotional responses: fear, sadness, and something they called parental grief response. They were trying to weaponize the way parents feel when they lose their kids, I whispered. "That's exactly what they were doing," Bob confirmed, "and our cave system was perfect for testing it. Natural amplification, isolated location, and—" He hesitated. "And what?" "The Cherokee warnings weren't just about the caves, Patty. They were warnings about what lived in the caves. The scientists didn't create something new. They woke up something that was already here." My hands were shaking as I read through more reports. The experiments had started small, just testing how sound bounced through limestone. But by 1991, they were reporting anomalous phenomena. Equipment moved by itself. Researchers hearing voices when no one was around. Several team members requesting transfers after claiming to see manifestations in the caves. Then I found the report that made my blood freeze. "Subject exhibits strong attraction to bereaved parents," I read. Aloud. "Entity appears to feed on parental grief, growing stronger in the presence of mothers and fathers who have lost children. Recommendation: discontinue all experiments involving personnel with deceased offspring." They found something down there. Bob said, something that had been sleeping in the deep caves for who knows how long. And when they started pumping those caves full of grief frequency sound waves, they woke it up. "Where is all this equipment now?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. "Still down there. The project was shut down officially in 1992, but they left everything in place, said it was too expensive to remove safely." Bob closed the folders. "We get a small payment from the government every year to keep quiet about it. Part of our park budget comes from that money." I thought about all those grieving parents I talked to, all those voices calling from the caves. It's still active, isn't it? The equipment. Bob nodded slowly. "Motion sensors show power consumption in the deep cave systems. Someone, somewhere, is still running experiments, and whatever's down there is getting stronger." I stood up, my legs feeling weak. "I need to see this equipment for myself." "Patty, no. The caves where the gear is located are off-limits for a reason. There are signs posted, locked gates." "I have master keys," I reminded him, "and I'm going down there tonight." Bob grabbed my arm. "You lost a child, didn't you?" That's why you ended up here, running away from something. I pulled free. That's exactly why I have to go. If this thing feeds on parental grief, then I'm already on its menu. I might as well find out what I'm dealing with. That evening, I drove to the access road for Deep Hollow Cave, the biggest cave system in our park and the one with the most equipment markings on those government maps. There were warning signs everywhere: authorized personnel only, dangerous gases, unstable rock formations. All lies, I realized. The real danger wasn't gas or rocks. I cut the lock on the gate with bolt cutters from my truck. My flashlight beam revealed a metal walkway leading into the cave, definitely not natural. This was government construction, built to last. The deeper I went, the more I could feel it. A low vibration in the air, like standing too close to a massive speaker. My teeth ached from it, my bones hummed with the frequency. And then I found the equipment room. It was like something out of a science fiction movie. Banks of computers lined the walls, their lights blinking steadily in the darkness. Massive speakers were built right into the cave walls, wired into the limestone itself, and in the center of it all was a control panel with dozens of switches and dials. One of the screens was active. It showed sound wave patterns, constantly, shifting and changing. At the bottom of the screen were two words that made my heart stop: grief detected. I was still staring at the screen when I heard it. Emma's voice, coming from everywhere at once. "Mama! Mama! Where are you? I'm scared! Please come find me!" The speakers in the walls were broadcasting my daughter's voice, but that was impossible. Emma had been dead for 3 years. There was no recording of her voice in any government database, unless the thing in the caves had learned to copy her perfectly. "Mama, please, I'm lost. I need you." I reached for the power switches, ready to shut down everything. But before I could touch them, the cave around me started to change. The walls were moving, breathing like they were alive. And I realized I wasn't alone in that room anymore. The air in the cave got thick, like trying to breathe through wet cotton. The computer screens flickered, and that low humming sound grew louder. I could feel it in my chest now, making my heart beat funny. "Mama, help me!" Emma's voice called again. But now it was coming from behind me. I turned around slowly, my flashlight shaking in my hand. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the same limestone walls and government equipment, but then the shadows started moving. It wasn't like the moving shadows I'd seen on the trails. This was different. The darkness was gathering itself together, forming a shape, getting bigger, getting real. "You hear her too," a voice said. Not Emma's voice, something else, something that sounded like gravel mixed with broken glass. "You hear your lost little one." The shadow finished forming into something I'll never forget as long as I live. It looked like a big cat, maybe the size of a mountain lion, but wrong in every way possible. Its fur was black as midnight, and it had wings like a bat stretched out from its shoulders. But the worst part was its eyes. They weren't animal eyes. They were like mirrors, and in each one I could see Emma's face, my little girl, looking scared and alone. "What are you?" I whispered. "I am what feeds on what you feel," it said. The creature's mouth didn't move when it talked. The words just appeared in my head. "I am what grows strong on the love that has nowhere to go." I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't work. The creature moved closer, its claws clicking on the metal floor. With each step, Emma's voice got louder. "Mama, why did you leave me? Why didn't you save me?" "She's dead," I said, more to myself than to the thing. "Emma's dead. You're not real." The creature made a sound that might have been laughing. "Dead? Yes. Gone. No. Nothing ever really dies, Grief Mother. It just changes places." The cave around us started to shift. The walls became transparent, like looking through dirty glass, and on the other side, I could see Emma. She was in a place that looked like our old house, but darker. The furniture was all wrong, twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Emma was sitting on her bed crying. She looked exactly like she did the day she died, wearing the same pink dress she'd had on for dance class. "She's been waiting for you," the creature said, "waiting for you to come find her, but you ran away instead. You left her alone in the dark place." "That's not true," I said, but my voice was weak. Because part of me had always felt like I'd abandoned Emma by surviving the crash when she didn't. "Look closer," the creature whispered. The vision changed. Now I could see Emma trying to open doors that wouldn't budge, calling for me through windows that wouldn't break. She looked so scared, so lost. "I've been taking care of her," the creature said, "keeping her company in the space between life and death. But she's lonely. She wants her mama." I took a step toward the transparent wall, reaching out to touch it. Emma looked up and saw me. A face lit up with joy. "Mama, you came for me. I knew you would." My heart broke all over again. Every night for 3 years, I dreamed of seeing Emma one more time, of holding her and telling her how sorry I was. And here she was, so close. I could almost touch her. "All you have to do is help me," the creature said. "There are others like you, other grief mothers, other lost children. Help me reach them, and you can be with Emma forever." "What do you mean, help you?" The creature's wings spread wider. "You know where they go. The ones who come here looking for their dead children. You have their names, their addresses. Bring them to me, and their pain will feed me, and their children will join Emma in the dark place." I thought about Mrs. Henderson, about Mr. Rodriguez, about all the other parents who'd reported hearing their dead kids in the caves. The creature wanted me to lead them into a trap. And if I don't, Emma's face in the vision changed. The joy disappeared, replaced by hurt and anger. "Then you're leaving me again, Mama, just like you did before." "I didn't leave you," I said, tears running down my face. "I would never leave you." "But you did," Emma said, her voice getting colder. "When the car crashed, you chose to live. You chose to leave me behind." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach because they were the same words I'd been telling myself for 3 years. Maybe if I'd been driving slower, maybe if I'd taken a different route, maybe if I'd died instead of her. "She blames you," the creature said, moving closer. "Deep down, in the part of her that's still a scared little girl, she blames you for not saving her. But I can fix that. I can make her forgive you. All you have to do is bring me more grief mothers." I looked at Emma's face in the vision. She was staring at me with eyes full of hurt and disappointment. The same look she'd given me when I'd had to tell her we couldn't get a puppy, or when I'd been too tired to read her an extra bedtime story. "How many?" I asked quietly. The creature's eyes gleamed. "Just a few. Maybe 10 or 12. Enough to make me strong enough to break free from these caves. Then Emma and all the other lost children can come home." "Come home where?" "To the real world. To live again." It was everything I'd ever wanted. Emma alive again. Emma in my arms again. All I had to do was sacrifice some other parents who were already broken by grief anyway. I took another step toward the transparent wall. Emma pressed her hand against it from the other side, and for just a second I could swear I felt her warmth. "Mama, please," she whispered. "I'm so scared without you." I raised my hand to match hers, our palms almost touching through whatever barrier separated us. But then I remembered something. The day Emma died, just before the ambulance came, she'd whispered something to me. I'd been holding her broken little body, and she'd used her last breath to say, "Take care of the other kids, Mama. Promise me." The real Emma wouldn't want me to hurt other parents. She'd want me to protect them. I stepped back from the wall. "No." The creature's friendly voice disappeared, replaced by something full of rage. "You would abandon your child again?" "Emma's, not my child," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "She's just another lie you're telling me." The vision shattered like glass. Emma's image screamed as it broke apart, and the sound was so horrible I fell to my knees. But I didn't change my mind. The creature grew bigger, its wings blocking out the ceiling lights. When it spoke now, its voice was like thunder mixed with the sound of crying children. "Then you will feed me your grief until there is nothing left of you," it said. "And when you are empty, I will wear your face and hunt the others myself." That's when I understood I wasn't getting out of this cave alive. At least, not the way I'd come in. But maybe there was another way. The creature loomed over me. Its bat wings spread so wide they touched the cave walls on both sides. The computer screens around us were going crazy, flashing red and white like emergency lights. That low humming sound was so loud now I could barely think. "You cannot escape me, Grief Mother," it said. "I have been feeding on your pain for months. Every night you dream of your lost child, I grow stronger. Every tear you shed, I feast." I stayed on my knees, trying to look defeated while my mind raced. The creature was right about one thing. I'd been having dreams about Emma ever since. I started working at the park. Dreams where she was calling for help. Dreams where I couldn't find her. "How long have you been watching me?" I asked. "Since the first day you set foot in my domain," it said. "You came here heavy with grief, like a wounded animal drawing blood. I could smell your pain from miles away." The creature moved closer, its claws scraping on the metal floor. Those mirror eyes were still showing Emma's face, but now she looked angry and hurt. "You want to know the truth?" it said. "Your daughter is trapped between worlds because of you. Your guilt keeps her spirit from moving on. Every time you blame yourself for her death, you chain her tighter to this place." "That's not how death works," I said, but my voice shook, because what if it was true? What if my grief really was keeping Emma from finding peace? "Isn't it?" The creature laughed, and the sound was like breaking bottles. "You were a teacher. You understand how minds work. Guilt is the strongest chain of all, and you wear yours like jewelry." I thought about all the nights I'd laid awake, playing the accident over and over in my head, all the ways I could have prevented it, all the reasons it should have been me instead of her. "I can free her," the creature said, its voice getting softer, more reasonable. "But I need your help. Not to hurt anyone, just to show other parents. What I showed you, let them choose for themselves." "Choose what?" "Whether they want to see their children again, whether they want to let go of their guilt." The creature sat back on its haunches like a giant cat. "Some will choose to stay and feed me willingly. Others will choose to leave. But at least they'll have the choice." It sounded almost reasonable when it said it like that, just giving grieving parents options, letting them decide whether seeing their dead children was worth the price. What happens to the ones who choose to stay? They become part of me. Their grief feeds me until I'm strong enough to break free from these caves, and then, the creature's eyes gleamed, then I hunt in the wider world. Every parent who has ever lost a child becomes my prey. There it was, the real plan. The creature didn't want to help anyone. It wanted to spread like a disease, feeding on parental grief everywhere it could find it. And Emma? Your daughter will be free to move on. No more chains of guilt holding her back. The creature's voice was almost gentle now. Isn't that what any good mother would want? For her child to find peace? I closed my eyes and tried to think clearly. The creature was using every psychological trick in the book, making me feel guilty about Emma being trapped, offering me a way to free her that required hurting other people, making it sound like the right thing to do. But I'd taught kindergarten for 8 years. I knew how manipulation worked, and I knew the difference between love and selfishness. You're lying, I said quietly. The creature's friendly tone disappeared instantly. What? Emma isn't trapped. Because of my guilt. She's gone, and that's okay. That's how death works. I opened my eyes and looked straight at those mirror faces. You're just using my love for her to make me hurt other people. The creature reared up on its hind legs, suddenly looking less like a cat and more like a monster. You stupid woman. Do you think you can resist me? I am older than your species. I have fed on parental grief since the first human mother lost her first human child. Maybe, I said, getting slowly to my feet, but you made one mistake. What mistake? I smiled even though I was more scared than I'd ever been in my life. You let me see your equipment. I turned and grabbed the biggest power switch on the control panel. The creature lunged at me, but I was already pulling the switch down. Half the computer screens went dark immediately. You cannot stop me, the creature roared. I exist in the spaces between dimensions. Your machines only make me stronger. I hit another switch, then another. More screens went dark. The humming. Sound started to change pitch, getting higher and more shrill. You're right, I said, reaching for a dial labeled frequency control. The machines do make you stronger, but what happens when I change the frequency? The creature froze. For the first time since I'd seen it, it looked uncertain. You feed. On grief, I said, turning the dial. But grief isn't the only strong emotion parents feel for their children. I thought about Emma. Not about losing her, but about loving her. About the joy she brought me every single day of her short life. About how proud I was to be her mother. About how lucky I felt to have had her at all, even if it was only for 7 years. The dial clicked to a new setting. The humming sound changed completely, becoming something warm and gentle, like a lullaby. The creature screamed and stumbled backward. Where the sound waves hit it, its dark fur started to smoke. Love, I whispered, understanding finally. You can feed on grief, but love burns you. I started singing Emma's lullaby, the real one I'd made up just for her. My voice was shaky at first, but it got stronger with each word. The cave's natural acoustics picked up the song and amplified it, sending it bouncing off every limestone wall. Sleep now, my darling. Dream of tomorrow. Mama will keep all your troubles away. The creature was writhing on the floor now, its wings burning away like paper in a fire. But it wasn't dying. It was changing. You think this will stop me? It gasped. I will learn to feed on love too. I will twist every parent's affection into something that serves me. That's when I realized something terrible. The creature was right. It could adapt. It could learn. And if I let it escape these caves, it would figure out how to corrupt love. The same way it had corrupted grief. There was only one way to stop it permanently. I had to make sure it never left these caves at all. I looked around the equipment room, my mind working fast. The creature was hurt, but not dead. It was already starting to heal, its burned wings growing back like black smoke. I had maybe a few minutes before it would be strong enough to attack. Again, the cave system was huge, with tunnels going in every direction, but all of them connected to this main chamber where the government had put their equipment. If I could bring down this room, I could seal off the whole network, trap the creature inside forever. But first, I had to make sure it couldn't escape. Through the tunnels, I grabbed my radio and switched it to the emergency frequency. This is Ranger Davis. I need immediate help at Deep Hollow Cave. Send explosives team and cave rescue. Tell them to seal all the cave entrances except the main one. The voice that came back was full of static, but I could hear Bob's worried tone. Patty, what's going on? Your signal is breaking up. Just do it, Bob. Seal the caves. All of them, and don't let anyone come in after me. I turned off the radio before he could argue. The creature was getting back on its feet, literally growing stronger as I watched. Its mirror eyes were focused on me with pure hate. You cannot trap me, it said. These caves go deep into the earth, deeper than your kind has ever explored. I will find another way out. Maybe, I said, working my way along the control panel, but it'll take you years, maybe decades. and by then people will have forgotten about this place. I found what I was looking for, a row of switches labeled seismic resonance. The government scientists had been using sound waves to map the cave structure. If I turned up the power high enough, I could make the limestone itself shake apart. "You're willing to die just to stop me?" the creature asked. It sounded genuinely curious. "I'm a mother," I said simply. "Protecting children is what mothers do." I thought about Emma one more time. Not the fake version the creature had shown me, but the real Emma. The little girl who gave hugs to kids who were crying, who shared her lunch with anyone who forgot theirs, who made me proud every single day just by being kind. "This is for you, baby," I whispered. Then I pushed every switch and turned every dial as far as they would go. The sound that came out of those speakers was like nothing I'd ever heard. It wasn't just loud, it was deep and powerful and alive. The limestone walls started to vibrate, sending dust and pebbles raining down from the ceiling. The creature screamed and lunged at me, but the sound waves hit it like a physical wall. It couldn't get close to the control panel while that noise was pouring out of the speakers, but the sound was hurting me too. My ears felt like they were going to burst. Blood was running down the sides of my neck. The vibrations were so strong I could feel my bones shaking inside my body. I kept singing Emma's lullaby, even though I couldn't hear my own voice anymore. The cave acoustics picked up my song and mixed it with the electronic sounds, creating something that was part technology and part pure love. The creature was dissolving now, its black fur turning to smoke and shadow. But as it fell apart, it spoke one last time. "This isn't over, Grief Mother. I have touched your world now. Others like me will come. They will learn from my mistakes." Then something impossible happened. The noise stopped, but not because the equipment broke. It stopped because Emma was there. Not the fake Emma from the creature's vision, the real Emma. I could tell because she was glowing with soft, warm light, and when she smiled at me, I felt peace instead of pain. "Hi, Mama," she said. Her voice somehow clear despite all the chaos around us. "Emma, how are you here? I came to help you finish this." She walked over to the control panel like she belonged there. The monster was right about one thing. Love is stronger than grief, but it takes both of us to make it work. She put her small hand over mine on the control panel. The moment we touched, the sound changed again. Now it wasn't just my lullaby or the electronic frequencies. It was every song I'd ever sung to her, every bedtime story, every "I love you" I'd whispered when she was sleeping. The sound was so beautiful and so powerful that the cave walls started to crack, not just vibrating now, but actually breaking apart. The ceiling was coming down in chunks. "We have to go, Mama," Emma said. "I'm not leaving you again." She laughed, and it was the most wonderful sound in the world. "You never left me, silly. I've been with you this whole time. Every time you helped a scared kid or made someone feel better, I was there too." The cave was collapsing faster now. Rocks the size of cars were falling all around us. But Emma took my hand and led me through the chaos, like she could see a safe path that I couldn't. "What happens now?" I asked as we ran. "Now the monster stays trapped and you go back to taking care of people," she said. "That's what you do best." We reached the cave entrance just as the whole system came down behind us. The sound was like thunder that went on forever. When the dust settled, there was just a pile of broken rock where the opening used to be. Emma was starting to fade, her glow getting dimmer. "Do you have to go?" I asked. "Yeah, but not because I'm trapped or sad, because it's time." She hugged me one last time, and I could actually feel her arms around me. "Take care of yourself, Mama, and take care of the other people who need help. Promise me?" "I promise." She smiled and disappeared, leaving me alone outside the collapsed cave. But I didn't feel alone. For the first time since the accident, I felt like Emma was truly at peace. And that meant I could be at peace too. At least that's what I thought. I didn't know then, that the creature had been telling the truth about one thing. This really wasn't over. It was just the beginning. 5 years passed after that night in the cave. 5 years of what felt like normal life. I couldn't hear much anymore. The acoustic battle had damaged my ears so badly that most sounds came to me like whispers through thick cotton. But in a way, that was okay. The world was quieter now, more peaceful. I went back to teaching, but this time I worked with deaf children at a special school in Little Rock. It turned out that losing my hearing was the best thing that could have happened to my career. I understood what my students were going through, in a way that hearing teachers never could. The kids loved me, and I loved them back. Every day I got to watch them learn and grow and discover new things. It reminded me why I'd become a teacher in the first place. It reminded me of Emma's last words, "Take care of the other kids." For 5 years I thought the nightmare was over. The cave system stayed collapsed. No more reports of strange sounds or voices calling from the limestone cliffs. The other park rangers said the area felt different now, lighter somehow, like a dark cloud had been lifted. I should have known it was too good to last. The first sign that something was wrong came from an unexpected place. Dr. Sarah Chen, a geologist from the University of Arkansas, called me on a Tuesday morning in October. "Ms. Davis, I hope you don't mind me calling, but I got your number from Bob Martinez at the Park Service. I wanted to ask you about the cave collapse 5 years ago." My blood went cold. "What about it?" "Well, I've been studying seismic activity in the Ozark region, and I'm picking up some very unusual readings. They seem to be centered around the area where Deep Hollow Cave used to be." I gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of readings?" "Low-frequency vibrations. Almost like, well, this is going to sound crazy, but almost like something large breathing underground. The patterns are too regular to be natural." I closed my eyes and tried to stay calm. "How long have you been detecting these vibrations?" "That's the strange part. They started small about 6 months ago, but they're getting stronger, and they're spreading. We're now picking them up in cave systems as far as 50 miles away." 50 miles? The creature had said the caves went deeper than anyone knew, deeper than we'd ever explored. What if collapsing the main chamber hadn't trapped it at all? What if it had just forced it to dig deeper, to find new ways to the surface? "Dr. Chen, I need you to send me everything you have on these readings." "Of course, but can I ask why?" "Bob said you were involved in the original cave collapse, but he wouldn't give me any details." I thought about how to answer that. How do you tell a scientist that you'd fought a monster that feeds on parental grief? How do you explain that the creature had threatened to spread across the world? "Let's just say I have personal reasons for being concerned," I said finally. The files Dr. Chen sent me were terrifying. The seismic readings showed a pattern of vibrations moving through the underground limestone network like a slow heartbeat. But it wasn't random. The vibrations were following specific paths, paths that led to populated areas, towns with schools, neighborhoods with families, places where parents and children lived. I called Bob Martinez immediately. "Patty, good to hear from you," he said. "How's the teaching going?" "Bob, we have a problem, a big one." I explained about Dr. Chen's findings. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You think it's still alive down there?" he asked finally. "I think it's more than alive. I think it's learning, and I think it's getting ready to come up." Over the next few weeks, I started collecting reports from all over Arkansas and the surrounding states. Parents calling police about hearing their dead children's voices. Grief counselors reporting unusual behavior from their clients. Small towns where the suicide rate had suddenly spiked. All of them were located directly above the cave systems where Dr. Chen was detecting the strongest vibrations. The creature wasn't just alive. It was using the entire mountain range as a giant amplifier, just like it had threatened. It was sending out grief frequency signals through hundreds of miles of underground limestone, reaching into people's homes and hearts, and it was working. Parents who had lost children were being drawn to specific locations, caves mostly, but also sinkholes and natural springs. Anywhere the underground signals could reach the surface most clearly. I tried to warn people. I called the state police, the Park Service, even the FBI. But how do you convince people that a monster from another dimension is using sound waves to hunt grieving parents? They all thought I was crazy. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe 5 years of guilt and partial deafness had finally caught up with me. But then I got the call that proved I wasn't imagining things. Miss Davis, this is Detective Rodriguez with the Little Rock Police Department. We have a situation, and your name came up as someone who might be able to help. What kind of situation? We've had 17 missing persons reports in the last month. All of them parents who lost children in the past few years. The strange thing is, they all left home willingly. Their families say they claimed to hear their dead kids calling for help. 17 parents, in 1 month, in one city. Detective, where were they going? Did anyone see where they went? That's the strangest part. They were all heading toward Devil's Den State Park, specifically toward the areas with limestone caves. Devil's Den. About 60 miles from where I'd fought the creature 5 years ago, right in the path of Dr. Chen's seismic readings. I hung up the phone and sat in my quiet apartment trying to think. The creature had been right about everything. It had learned to adapt. It had found new ways to hunt. And now it was calling grieving parents from all over the region. But there was something else, something that made this even worse than I'd imagined. If it could reach 17 people in Little Rock, how many others was it reaching? How many? Grieving parents across the country might be hearing their dead children's voices right now, getting ready to leave their homes and drive toward Arkansas. The creature had promised to spread across the world, and now it was keeping that promise. It didn't need to leave the caves anymore. It could hunt from deep underground, using the earth itself as its weapon. And I was the only person who knew how to stop it. I looked at the photo of Emma I kept on my kitchen table. She was smiling in her dance costume, happy and alive and beautiful. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "Looks like Mama has to go back to work." The next morning I started packing for Arkansas. I had no idea how to fight something that could control an entire mountain range, but I had to try. Because somewhere in those caves, 17 parents were walking toward their doom, and behind them, hundreds more might be following. The frequency of madness was spreading, and I was the only one who could hear it coming. The end. My name is Patricia Davis, but everyone calls me Patty. I'm 39 years old, and I work as a park ranger at Buffalo National River in Arkansas. Most people think I have a pretty good job, spending my days in the beautiful outdoors, helping visitors, keeping the trails safe. They're right about one thing: this place is beautiful. The limestone cliffs rise up like ancient walls, covered in green trees that change colors with the seasons. The river runs clear and cold, and on quiet mornings you can hear it singing over the rocks. But beautiful places can hold ugly secrets, and I should know, because I carry one of the ugliest secrets of all. 3 years ago, I wasn't a park ranger. I was a kindergarten teacher in Little Rock. I loved those kids like they were my own. Every morning, I'd watch their little faces light up when they learned something new. I taught them to tie their shoes, to spell their names, to be kind to each other. I was good at it too. The kids called me Miss Patty, and their parents trusted me with their most precious things. I had my own precious thing back then. Her name was Emma. She was 7 years old, with curly brown hair and eyes that sparkled when she laughed. Emma was the light of my world. She loved butterflies and ice cream and bedtime stories. She used to hum this little lullaby I taught her. A simple tune that went, "Sleep now, my darling, dream of tomorrow. Mama will keep all your troubles away." Emma died on a Tuesday night in March. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit our car while we were coming home from her dance class. I walked away with a few bruises. Emma didn't walk away at all. After that, I couldn't teach anymore. I couldn't look at other people's children and not think about mine. I couldn't hear their laughter without hearing Emma's voice mixed in. So I quit. I moved away from Little Rock, away from the memories, away from everything that reminded me of the life I used to have. That's how I ended up here, in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, taking care of strangers who come to hike and camp and fish. It's quiet here, most of the time anyway. The limestone bluffs are the most beautiful part of this place. They stretch for miles along the river, carved by water and time into amazing shapes. Some look like castles, others like sleeping giants. The rock is white and grey, and when the sun hits it just right, it almost glows. There are caves everywhere, some big enough to walk through, others just dark holes in the cliff face. But here's the thing about limestone. It does funny things with sound. The rock is full of tiny holes and cracks, and when the wind blows through them, it makes music. Sometimes it sounds like singing, sometimes it sounds like whispers, and sometimes, if you're not careful, it sounds like children laughing. The first time I heard it, I was hiking the Ponca Trail, checking for fallen trees after a storm. It was a beautiful afternoon, sunny and warm, with just enough breeze to keep the bugs away. I was enjoying the peace when I heard it, the sound of kids playing echoing off the cliffs. My heart stopped. For just a second, I thought Emma was there with me. I thought I heard her giggle mixed in with the others. I called out, thinking maybe there was a family hiking nearby that I hadn't seen. But nobody answered. The laughter just kept echoing, bouncing from cliff to cliff until I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I told myself it was just the wind, just the limestone playing tricks on my ears. But as I kept walking, I noticed something strange. The shadows on the ground didn't match the trees above them. They moved on their own, like they were dancing to music I couldn't hear. That's when I started to understand that this place was different. That maybe I hadn't found a quiet refuge after all. Maybe I'd found something else entirely. But I stayed anyway. Where else was I going to go? And besides, sometimes when the wind is just right and the sun hits the cliffs in that special way, I swear I can hear Emma humming her lullaby. Even if it scares me a little, it's the closest thing to having her back that I'll ever get. I just wish I had known then what was really making those sounds. I wish I had known what was waiting for me in those beautiful, terrible caves. My name is Thomas Hartwell, but everyone calls me Tom. I'm 45 years old, and I work as a ranger here in Olympic National Forest in Washington. Today started like any other day, but something was very wrong from the moment I stepped into the woods. I was walking through the old trees, the really big ones that have been here for hundreds of years. Usually I love hearing all the different birds singing their morning songs, but today, every single bird was making the exact same sound. Not similar sounds, the exact same note over and over. It was like someone had recorded one bird and was playing it from every tree. The morning felt peaceful at first. The sun was coming up and everything looked normal. But then I looked at the shadows on the ground and my stomach dropped. The shadows were pointing east, but the sun was rising in the west. That's impossible. The sun always rises in the east, always. I stopped walking and watched a squirrel run up a pine tree, but it wasn't running up normally. It was running backwards, like someone was playing a movie in reverse. Its little paws moved perfectly, but in the wrong direction. It made my head hurt to watch. My radio crackled to life. The voice was talking about some missing campers from yesterday, standard stuff, until the static started forming words. I heard it clear as day. Frequency, breach, containment. The words came through the white noise like someone was whispering. Secrets through the static. I started whistling one of those old army marching songs I learned in Korea. It always helped calm my nerves. But when I stopped, the forest echoed it back to me. Not in my voice, in the voice of a dead man, cold and hollow, like it was coming from underground. The smell hit me next. Pine trees always smell fresh and clean, but now there was something else mixed in, something metallic like blood and electricity had been stirred together. It made my nose burn and my eyes water. I pulled out my compass to check my direction. The needle was spinning, but not the right way. It was going counterclockwise, opposite to how it should move. I tapped the glass, thinking it was broken, but it kept spinning the wrong way. That's when I found the deer. It was lying in a small clearing, and at first I thought it had just died naturally. Animals die in the forest all the time. But as I got closer, I saw something that made me want to run. The deer's skeleton was on the outside, and all its organs were on the inside, but perfectly fine, like someone had turned it inside out without damaging anything. The heart was still red and fresh-looking. I looked up at the sky and saw storm clouds gathering, but they weren't forming like normal clouds. These were making perfect shapes, triangles and squares and circles. Too perfect. Nature doesn't make straight lines or perfect angles like that. Then everything went quiet, not just quiet, completely silent. No birds, no wind, no insects, nothing. I looked at my watch and it showed 11:47. My blood went cold. That was the exact time my unit got ambushed in Korea 15 years ago, the exact minute when everything in my life went wrong. I stood there in that dead silence, surrounded by all these impossible things, and I knew something terrible was about to happen. The forest felt like it was watching me, waiting for something. The air itself felt heavy and wrong. My hands started shaking. Not from the cold, but from something deeper. Something that reminded me of that day in Korea when the world exploded around us and I couldn't save Jimmy. The same feeling of being trapped in a nightmare that you can't wake up from. I wanted to turn around and go back to the ranger station. I wanted to call in sick and go home, but I couldn't move. It was like the forest had its hooks in me, pulling me deeper into whatever was wrong with this place. The silence stretched on, and I realized that 11:47 had lasted way too long. Time itself seemed broken here, just like everything else. I took a deep breath of that metallic air and started walking deeper into the woods. Something was very wrong in Olympic National Forest, and as a ranger, it was my job to find out what. Even if every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, I need to tell you something about myself. About why I came to work in these woods, and why today felt so familiar in all the wrong ways. I have gray eyes. People always told me they were unusual, but I never cared about that. What I care about is what these eyes have seen. Since Korea, I see things that aren't there. Dead soldiers standing in shadows. Sometimes I turn around expecting to see Jimmy, my best friend from the war, but it's just empty space. The truth is, I came to work in Olympic National Forest because of the electromagnetic interference. The mountains and the thick trees mess with radio signals and electrical equipment, and somehow that scrambled interference quiets the voices in my head, the memories that won't leave me alone. But today, walking through these wrong woods, the memories were coming back stronger than ever. I was a coward in Korea. That's the truth I've never told anyone. When Jimmy needed me most, when the enemy was closing in on his position, I hesitated. Just for a few seconds, but those seconds cost him his life. I was supposed to give him cover fire, but I froze up. By the time I started shooting, it was too late. I still carried Jimmy's compass, the one his father gave him before we shipped out. It's supposed to point north, but ever since Jimmy died, it points toward places where people have died. Battlefields, accident sites, graveyards. Today, it was pointing deeper into the forest, toward wherever those missing campers might be. Sometimes I talk to Jimmy. I know he's dead. I know it's just in my head, but the guilt brought him back somehow. He stands at the foot of my bed at night and asks me why I let him die. I tell him I'm sorry, over and over, but he never answers. We're back. I'm scared of electrical storms, terrified actually. During the war, we used radios to call for help and coordinate attacks, but one night the enemy was listening to our radio chatter. They used our own communications to set up an ambush. When the lightning started that night and the radio crackled with static, I knew we were all going to die. The storm mixed with the sound of gunfire and screaming, and now every time I hear thunder, I'm back there. That's why I take medication. Pills for the seizures that started after the shell shock. Pills to help me sleep without screaming Jimmy's name. My doctor says survivor guilt can mess with your brain in ways that never fully heal. I know every trail in this forest because I walk them constantly. Walking helps quiet the voices of the dead. The steady rhythm of my boots on the dirt path drowns out the sound of Jimmy asking why I didn't save him. Out here, with just the trees and the silence, I can almost pretend I'm a normal person who never went to war. My wife Sarah left me 3 years ago. She couldn't take it anymore. Me waking up screaming Jimmy's name every night, talking to empty corners of the room, jumping every time a car backfired. She said she felt like she was married to a ghost. Maybe she was right. Today, hearing about those missing campers, it all came rushing back. The way we left soldiers behind when the fighting got too heavy. The way I chose to save myself instead of going back for the wounded. Those campers reminded me of every person I've failed to save. I stopped walking and leaned against a big Douglas fir tree. My hands were shaking again, and I could feel one of my episodes coming on. The kind where the world gets fuzzy around the edges and I can't tell what's real anymore. That's when I smelled cigarettes. Jimmy always smoked Lucky Strikes, said they brought him luck. I followed the smell deeper into the woods. Even though I knew it was impossible, Jimmy was dead. I saw him die, but the smell was so real, so familiar. I found myself talking out loud to the empty forest. Jimmy, is that you? Are you here? The trees didn't answer, but the wind carried that cigarette smoke toward a clearing up ahead. My legs moved without me telling them to, following that impossible smell toward whatever was waiting for me. Part of me knew I was having another episode. Part of me knew the medication wasn't working anymore. But a bigger part of me needed to know if Jimmy was really there, if somehow he'd found a way to come back and finish the conversation we never got to have. The conversation where I told him I was sorry. I gripped his compass tighter and kept walking. The needle was spinning wildly now, like it couldn't decide which direction death was calling from. Maybe it was coming from all directions. The cigarette smell led me to a campsite that made my blood run cold. I'd found the missing campers' tents, but they weren't on the ground where they should be. They were hanging 30 feet up in the trees, torn to pieces and arranged in a pattern I recognized. The same pattern our squad used to sleep in back in Korea. The same formation we were in when the ambush killed everyone but me. But that wasn't the strangest part. Next to the campsite, hidden behind some thick bushes, I found equipment that didn't belong to any campers. Big metal dishes that looked like radar equipment, all painted military green. They had numbers and letters stenciled on the sides that I recognized from my army days. I walked closer, and my heart started pounding. These weren't just any military dishes. They were experimental equipment. The kind of stuff they don't tell regular soldiers about. The kind of stuff that gets stamped with words like classified and top secret. Papers were scattered around the equipment, blowing in the wind like autumn leaves. I caught one and read the header. Project Blue Paper, Dimensional Breach Protocol. The rest was covered in words I didn't understand, but I saw my name mentioned in one of the paragraphs. My unit from Korea was listed there too. I felt sick to my stomach. More papers blew past me, and I grabbed them as fast as I could. They talked about opening rifts, whatever that meant, and studying something called transdimensional warfare. One document had a list of dates going back to 1945, right after the war ended. Each date had a location and a note about entity contact or dimensional breach. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely read the words. That's when all the electronic equipment around me started making noise. Not normal beeping or static, it was making the sound of Korean War radio chatter from 1952. Voices I recognized, voices of dead soldiers calling for help that never came. I heard Sergeant Martinez asking for backup. I heard Lieutenant Johnson screaming coordinates into his radio, and I heard Jimmy's voice, clear as day, calling my name and asking where I was. I dropped the papers and backed away from the equipment, but the voices followed me. They were coming. From my own radio now, from my watch, from anything with circuits or batteries. Then I saw something that made me think I was losing my mind completely. Hanging from a low branch, about eye level, were Jimmy's dog tags. The same ones he wore every day in Korea. The same ones that should have been buried with him 15 years ago, thousands of miles away. I reached out with shaking fingers and touched them. They were real, cold metal with his name stamped into them. James Jimmy Rodriguez, blood type O positive, Catholic. How were they here? The radar equipment started humming louder and numbers appeared on small screens I hadn't noticed before. The readings showed shapes moving through the forest. Big shapes that the readout said don't exist in our frequency. Whatever that meant, I found more evidence that someone had been here for a while. Carved into the bark of several trees were symbols I'd seen before during my training about the local Native American tribes. Chinook warnings, if I remembered right. They said something like, "Sky swimming death bringers wake when sky voice screams." I'd always thought they were just old stories. Now I wasn't so sure. My radio crackled again, and this time it was a voice I recognized from the present. Danny Morrison, another vet from my unit who'd survived Korea. He'd called me last month, talking crazy about weird things happening in these woods. I told him he was imagining things, that he needed to take his medication and stay away from the forest. Danny never called back. Now I was hearing his voice coming through the radio static, saying my name over and over. "Tom, Tom, they got me, Tom. Don't come looking." I realized Danny wasn't missing by accident. He'd been taken. The electromagnetic readings on air. The equipment were going crazy now, the numbers spinning higher and higher. And every time they spiked, I felt one of my flashbacks starting. My vision would blur, and for a few seconds I'd see Korean battlefields overlapping with the forest around me. Dead soldiers walking between the trees, explosions in the distance, the smell of gunpowder mixing with pine needles. I understood, now that this wasn't random. Some government project, had been doing experiments in these woods. They'd been opening doorways to somewhere else. And whatever was on the other side had been waiting for people like me. Veterans with damaged minds and traumatic memories. The missing campers, Danny, maybe others, they'd all been veterans dealing with PTSD. The government files I'd found mentioned that specifically. They were looking for people whose minds were already broken by war. But why? Thunder rumbled overhead, and the electromagnetic readings shot even higher. The storm clouds I'd seen earlier were moving in fast, forming those impossible geometric patterns against the gray sky. I needed to get out of there. Every instinct I had was screaming that I was in danger. But Jimmy's dog tags were still hanging in front of me, and I couldn't leave them behind again. I reached for them just as the first bolt of lightning split the sky. The electromagnetic equipment exploded to life, and suddenly I wasn't alone in the forest anymore. Something was watching me from the shadows between the trees. Something that knew my name. The lightning hit again, and that's when I saw him. Jimmy was standing about 20 feet away, next to a big pine tree. He looked exactly like he did the day he died. Same uniform, same crooked smile, same Lucky Strike cigarette hanging from his lips. But something was wrong with his eyes. They were too bright, like someone had put tiny lights behind them. "Hey there, Tommy," he said, and his voice sounded exactly right. Been waiting a long time to see you again. I knew it wasn't really Jimmy. I knew Jimmy was dead, but my heart didn't care what my brain knew. I took a step toward him, tears running down my face. Jimmy, how are you here? He took a drag from his cigarette and smiled that sad smile I remembered so well. You left me to die, Tommy. Remember, you had one job, give me cover fire, but you froze up like a scared little boy. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I'm sorry, Jimmy, I'm so sorry. I think about it every day. I know you do, he said and started walking closer. That's why I'm here. That's why I can be here. As he moved, I noticed something strange. His shadow was wrong. It wasn't the shadow of a man. It was the shadow of something with huge wings. Wings that stretched 15 feet from tip to tip. Jimmy, what's happening to you? He stopped walking, and his smile got wider. Too wide. His teeth looked sharp now, not like human teeth at all. I'm not Jimmy anymore, Tommy. I just wear his face because it makes you hurt more. I feed on that hurt. I feed on the guilt that's been eating you alive for 15 years. The thing that looked like Jimmy started to change. His face stayed the same, but black leathery wings unfolded from his back. His hands grew claws, and his feet turned into something like a bat's. But the worst part was that he kept Jimmy's voice. What are you? I whispered. I'm what happens when the barriers between worlds get torn open, it said. Your government friends have been poking holes in reality since 1945, and things like me slip through. We live in the spaces between dimensions, and we're always hungry. Another lightning bolt lit up the sky, and for a second, I could see Korean battlefields overlapping with the forest. Dead soldiers walking between the trees, explosions in the distance, the smell of blood and gunpowder everywhere. The electromagnetic storms let me move between realities, the creature explained, still wearing Jimmy's face. When you're traumatic, memories get strong enough. They create cracks I can slip through. All those years of guilt and nightmares, you've been calling me home, Tommy. I understood now why the missing people were all veterans. We were like broken radio antennas, broadcasting our pain across dimensions. And things like this creature could tune in to that frequency. I've been feeding on soldiers like you for thousands of years, it continued. Every war, every battle, every man who survives when his friends don't, you all taste the same. Guilt mixed with electricity. Trauma mixed with regret. I looked at the government papers scattered around the campsite. How many others are there? Dozens, maybe hundreds. Your scientists keep opening doors they don't understand, and we keep coming through. This forest is just one feeding ground. There are others all over the world. The creature stepped closer, and I could smell death on its breath. The best part is, once I feed on someone enough, they become like a lighthouse for others like me. Danny found that out the hard way. What happened to Danny? He's still alive, technically, but he exists in multiple realities now, all at the same time. He's trapped in every traumatic memory he ever had, living them over and over while we feed on his pain. Eventually, he'll become one of us. Thunder rolled overhead, and the creature's wings spread wider. That's what's going to happen to you, Tommy. You're going to pay for Jimmy's death by experiencing it forever. Every possible way it could have happened. Every way you could have saved him, you'll live through all of them, and I'll be there to eat your suffering. Lightning struck again, and suddenly I was back in Korea, real Korea, not just a memory. I could smell the gunpowder and hear the enemy soldiers shouting. Jimmy was 20 feet away, pinned down behind a fallen log, calling for help. Cover me, Tommy! I can't make it without cover fire. I raised my rifle, but my hands were shaking too bad to aim. The fear was paralyzing me, just like it did 15 years ago. I was going to let Jimmy die all over again. But then the vision flickered, and I was back in the forest. The creature was laughing. See how easy it is? You're already trapped, Tommy. Already living in the space between what happened and what should have happened. All I have to do is feed. It reached toward me with claws that looked like they could tear through steel. But as it touched my forehead, something strange happened. Instead of pain, I felt understanding. I saw the truth about this thing. It wasn't just a monster that fed on trauma. It was a parasite that could only exist by keeping people trapped in their worst memories. It needed us to believe we were helpless, that we deserved to suffer forever. But I wasn't the same scared soldier who let Jimmy die. I'd spent 15 years learning about radios and electromagnetic equipment. I knew how frequencies worked. And if this creature traveled on the same frequency as traumatic memories, maybe I could find a way to jam its signal. The government equipment was still humming and crackling around us. If I could figure out how to use it. The creature pulled its claws away from my head and smiled with Jimmy's face. "Nice try, Tommy, but you can't fight what you are. You're a coward who let his best friend die. That's all you'll ever be." For the first time in 15 years, I looked at that accusation and didn't believe it. I ran to the government equipment while the creature was still wearing Jimmy's face. My hands flew over the controls, remembering everything I'd learned about radio frequencies during my Ranger training. If this thing traveled on the same wavelength as traumatic memories, then maybe I could disrupt its signal long enough to trap it in our reality. "What are you doing, Tommy?" the creature asked, sounding amused. "You think you can fight me with broken military equipment?" I ignored it and kept working. The electromagnetic readings were going crazy as the storm got stronger overhead. Lightning was hitting every few seconds now, and each time it did, the creature became more solid, more real. That was the key. During electrical storms, it had to become physical to move between dimensions. That's when it would be vulnerable. I found the frequency controls and started adjusting them, searching for the right signal. The equipment was old, but still working. Numbers flashed on the screens as I tuned through different wavelengths. "You can't save yourself by running away again," the creature said, moving closer. "Just like you couldn't save Jimmy." "Maybe not," I said, still working on the controls, "but I can try something I should have done 15 years ago." I found what I was looking for. A frequency that made the creature stumble backward like I'd hit it with a physical force. The signal was disrupting whatever energy it used to stay connected to other dimensions. "There," I whispered, "found your frequency." The creature's face twisted with anger. "It won't work, Tommy. Even if you trap me here, you'll still be a coward. You'll still be the man who let his best friend die." I looked at the radio controls and made a decision that scared me more than anything else I'd ever done. Instead of trying to destroy the creature, I was going to broadcast something else on its feeding frequency. Jimmy's last words. I'd never told anyone what Jimmy really said when he was dying. Not the doctors, not Sarah, not even myself most of the time, but I remembered every word. I picked up the radio microphone and started broadcasting on the creature's frequency. "Tommy," I said in my own voice, but repeating Jimmy's words exactly. "Tommy, don't blame yourself. You did your best. Sometimes your best isn't enough, but that doesn't make you a coward. I'm proud to have you as my friend." The creature screamed and started changing shape, becoming more bat-like and less human. "Stop it! Those aren't the words. He blamed you. He died hating you." "No," I said, still broadcasting. "Those are the words he actually said. Not the words my guilt made up afterward. Jimmy forgave me before he died. I just couldn't forgive myself." Lightning struck the biggest tree in the clearing, and electrical energy poured through all the government equipment. The creature became completely solid, completely trapped in our reality. Its wings were real now, 15 feet across and covered in black fur. Its claws could actually cut me, but it was also vulnerable. I kept broadcasting Jimmy's real last words while I reached into my backpack for the emergency flares I always carried. If I could create a big enough electrical surge while the creature was solid. "You're going to die for this, Tommy. it snarled. "Even if you destroy me, there are others, dozens of others, and now they'll all know where to find you." "I know," I said, and lit all 6 flares at once. The creature lunged at me with its claws extended, but I was ready. I threw the burning flares directly at the government equipment, just as another lightning bolt hit the clearing. The electrical surge that followed was like nothing I'd ever seen. White light filled the forest, and the creature's scream was so loud it made my ears bleed. The dimensional rift they'd been using, the invisible doorway between realities, suddenly became visible as a crack in the air itself. The explosion threw me backward against a tree so hard I felt ribs break. But it worked. The creature was being pulled back through the rift as the dimensional doorway collapsed. "This isn't over," it screamed as it disappeared. "You're marked now. You exist in multiple realities. Others will come for you." The rift snapped shut with a sound like thunder, and suddenly the forest was quiet again. Real quiet, not the wrong. A kind of quiet from earlier. I lay against the tree, bleeding and probably dying, but feeling more peaceful than I had in 15 years. I'd finally done something right. I'd finally fought back instead of running away. But the creature had been telling the truth about one thing. I could feel it now. I existed in more than one reality. Part of me was still in Korea with Jimmy. Part of me was in other dimensions where different versions of that day played out. I could see dead people everywhere I looked. Not just Jimmy, but all the soldiers from all the wars throughout history. I'd become what the creature called a frequency anchor. Other dimensional entities would be drawn to me like moths to a flame. My radio crackled to life one more time. Government agents, probably coming to clean up the mess and cover everything up. They'd want to study me, keep me under observation, maybe use me as bait for other creatures. I pulled myself to my feet and started walking deeper into the forest. I couldn't go back to being a ranger. I couldn't go back to my normal life. But maybe I could do some good with this curse. If other creatures were going to come looking for me, I'd make sure they found me in places where they couldn't hurt innocent people. I'd become their target so other veterans could heal in peace. It wasn't the ending I'd wanted, but it was better than the ending Jimmy got. At least I was finally fighting back. As I walked away from the destroyed campsite, I heard Jimmy's voice one more time. Not the creature wearing his face, but the real Jimmy, speaking from whatever place good soldiers go when they die. "I'm proud of you, Tommy. You finally came through when it mattered." I smiled through the pain and kept walking. I had work to do. The frequency of fear would always be broadcasting somewhere in the world, but now, at least, someone was listening who knew how to fight back, even if that fight might never end. My name is Anthony Martinez, but everyone calls me Tony. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a park ranger here in Big Cypress National Preserve down in Florida. Most folks think being a ranger is all about helping lost tourists and counting birds. They don't know what I really do out here in the swamp. I've been working these waters for 3 years now, ever since I got back from Vietnam. The job helps me stay away from people, which is good for everyone. I paddle my little boat through these channels every day, checking on things, making sure everything's normal. But normal isn't a word I'd use for this place anymore. This morning started like any other. I loaded my gear into the boat just as the sun was coming up. The water looked pretty in the early light, all green and peaceful. Spanish moss hung down from the cypress trees like old curtains. Birds were singing their morning songs. It should have been beautiful, but something was wrong with the water today. As I paddled deeper into the swamp, I noticed colors that shouldn't be there. Purple and orange swirls mixed in with the normal green. The water bubbled in places like it was boiling, but it wasn't hot. I've seen a lot of strange things in my life, but this made my stomach turn. The birdsong started bothering me too. At first, I thought it was nice to hear so many different calls, Then I realized something weird about them. They sounded backwards somehow, like someone was playing a tape in reverse. The happy chirping sounds turned into something that sounded like screaming when I really listened. I stopped paddling and let the boat drift. That's when I saw the alligator. Now, I've seen plenty of gators in my time here. Big ones, small ones, mean ones. But this one was different. It came up out of the water real slow, like it wanted me to get a good look. And boy, did I get a look. This gator had too many eyes. Way too many. They were scattered all over its head, some big, some small. Each eye was looking in a different direction, like it could see things I couldn't. The worst part was that all those eyes seemed smart, like it knew exactly what it was looking at. I grabbed my rifle and pointed it at the thing, but it just sank back down into the water without making a sound. My hands were shaking as I put the gun back down. I've been having bad dreams since Vietnam, but this wasn't a dream. This was real, and it was wrong. I kept paddling, trying to forget about the gator, when I heard something on my radio. Sheriff's office was calling all units about a family that got killed at one of the camping spots deeper in the preserve. They said it was bad, real bad, and they needed someone who knew these swamps to get out there fast. The camping spot wasn't far from where I was, so I headed over. The smell hit me before I could see anything. It wasn't just the smell of death, though that was part of it. There was something else mixed in, something that made my nose burn and my eyes water. It smelled like the jungle in Vietnam, like that chemical smell we used to spray on the trees to kill them. Agent Orange, they called it. But that was impossible. This was Florida, not Vietnam. That war was over 10 years ago. When I got to the campsite, I had to cover my nose with my shirt. 3 people were dead, a mom, dad, and their little boy. They were lying around their tent like they'd been running from something. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. They all had the same look on their faces. Pure terror, but also something else. Like they'd been seeing things that weren't there. The sheriff's deputy, who was already there, looked sick. "Tony," he said, "I've never seen anything like this. No wounds, no blood. But look at their eyes." I looked, and I wished I hadn't. All 3 of them had their eyes wide open, staring at nothing. But the pupils were all wrong, like they'd been looking at something too bright, or too scary, or both. "What do you think killed them?" the deputy asked. I walked around the campsite looking for clues. The tent was torn up, but not by claws or teeth. It looked like it had been melted in some places. The ground around the tent was dead, like someone had poured poison on it. Even the grass was the wrong color. "Gas," I said finally. "Some kind of gas killed them." The deputy looked confused. "What kind of gas?" I couldn't tell him what I was really thinking. I couldn't say that the smell reminded me of watching Vietnamese villagers get sprayed with chemicals from helicopters. I couldn't say that those people had the same look in their eyes as the villagers who breathed in too much of that stuff. "I don't know," I lied. "But we need to get out of here. This whole area might be dangerous." As we were loading the bodies into the boat, I noticed something carved into one of the cypress trees nearby. The words were in a language I didn't know, but somehow I understood what they meant. "Where white man's poison rain falls, Earth Mother births rage children who breathe death." I didn't tell the deputy about that either. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those dead people and that gator with too many eyes. I kept smelling that chemical smell, even though I was miles away from the campsite now. I got up and looked at my old army stuff in the closet. My uniform, my medals, my knife, everything from Vietnam that I tried to forget about. The knife still had stains on it that I could never wash off, no matter how hard I scrubbed. I'd come to this swamp to get away from the war, but it felt like the war had followed me here. The same smells, the same fear, the same feeling that something terrible was watching me from the shadows. I poured myself a drink and sat on my porch, looking out at the dark water. Somewhere out there, something was moving through the swamp, something that killed families with poison gas and made animals grow extra eyes. And I had a feeling it was looking for me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw faces. Not the dead family from the campsite. Different faces. Older faces from a place I tried to forget. Vietnam, 1969. I was 21 years old and scared out of my mind. They sent us into a village outside Da Nang. Intelligence said it was full of enemy soldiers. We were supposed to clear it out, make sure it was safe. But when we got there, all we found were old people, women and kids. My sergeant, a big guy, from Texas named Rodriguez, didn't care. Orders are orders, he said. Can't take any chances. I still remember the smell of that village. Cooking fires, wet earth and fear. The people were hiding in their huts, too scared to come out. We were all jumpy, fingers on triggers, waiting for someone to start shooting. But nobody shot at us, not one bullet. That's when Rodriguez gave the order I still hear in my dreams. Light it up, he said, all of it. I want to say I didn't do it. I want to say I was the good guy who stood up and said no. But I was 21 and scared, and when your sergeant tells you to do something, you do it. We used flamethrowers first, then grenades. The huts went up fast, dry bamboo and palm leaves burning like paper. People started running out, and that's when we opened fire. I shot a woman carrying a baby. She fell right in front of me, still. Holding the child, the baby was crying, so I stopped it from crying. I've been carrying that weight for 12 years now. Every night I see that woman's face. Every morning I taste the smoke from that burning village. That's why I came to the swamp. The water, the quiet, the animals that don't judge you. It was supposed to help me forget. But you can't run from what you've done. It follows you everywhere. The next morning, I went back to the campsite where the family died. I had to know what killed them. The smell was still there, that chemical smell that made my skin crawl. I walked around the area real slow, looking at everything. The dead grass, the melted tent, the way the trees looked sick. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. Hidden behind some palmetto bushes was an old metal barrel. Green paint, mostly rusted away. But I could still read the words, stenciled on the side. U.S. Army, chemical agent, danger. My hands started shaking. I knew what that barrel used to hold. Agent Orange. The same stuff we sprayed all over Vietnam to kill the jungle. The same stuff that made the trees go bald and the ground turn black. But what was it doing here? In Florida? In the middle of a swamp? I found 3 more barrels buried in the mud. Nearby, all of them were leaking. That toxic orange liquid was seeping into the water, into the ground, into everything. I sat down on a log and tried to think. The army had been dumping chemical weapons here. But when and why? Then I remembered something. Back in '69, right before we shipped out to Vietnam, our unit spent 2 weeks at a training base in Florida. They said we were learning jungle warfare, but most of the time we just sat around waiting for orders. 2 weeks, right here in Big Cypress. I remember now. They had us spraying stuff on the trees, testing equipment, they said. We wore gas masks and sprayed orange liquid from big tanks. The officers said it was harmless, just practice for when we got to Vietnam. But it wasn't harmless. We were killing the swamp, just like we killed the jungle in Vietnam. And all these years later, it was still here, still poisoning everything it touched. That's when I heard the sound. A low growling came from somewhere deep in the swamp. Not like any animal I'd ever heard. It was too deep, too angry. And underneath, the growling, I could hear something else, like breathing but wrong, like someone trying to breathe through poison. I grabbed my rifle and stood up real quiet. The sound was getting closer. Whatever was making it, it was big, really big. The smell got worse. 2. Not just chemicals now, but something rotten, something that had been dead for a long time, but was still moving around. I backed away from the barrels, trying not to make any noise, but my foot hit something metal, and it rang out like a bell in the quiet swamp. The growling stopped. Everything went silent. No birds, no insects, no wind. just my heart beating so loud I thought whatever was out there would hear it. Then I saw the eyes, two red dots in the dark water, watching me. They were big, bigger than any gator's eyes, and they were full of hate. Pure, burning hate that made my skin feel cold even in the Florida heat. I raised my rifle, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. This was just like Vietnam all over again. The fear, the not knowing what was going to happen next. The feeling that I was going to die in some terrible way. The eyes moved closer. I could see something huge moving under the water, pushing waves toward the shore. It was coming for me. I did what I always do when I'm scared. I got angry instead. All the guilt, all the shame, all the nights I couldn't sleep because of what I did in that village, it all turned into rage. Hot red rage that made my vision go narrow and my muscles go tight. I screamed at those red eyes. Come on, come and get me, I'm not running. But the thing in the water just watched me for a long moment. Then, without making a sound, it sank, back down, and disappeared. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, rifle pointed at the water, waiting for it to come back. But it was gone. As I walked back to my boat, I realized something that scared me more than the creature in the water. When I'd seen those red eyes full of hate, I'd recognized that hate. I'd seen it before, in the mirror every morning for the past 12 years. Whatever was living in this poisoned swamp, it was angry about the same things I was angry about. The chemicals, the death, the lies we'd been told. And I had a feeling that when it came for me again, and it would come again, it wouldn't be looking for a fight. It would be looking for justice. I couldn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to the old ranger station that nobody uses anymore. It's been empty for years, but they still keep files there. Old reports, maps, stuff from when this place first became a preserve. I needed to know more about what my unit did here in 1969. The building smelled like dust and old paper. I found a flashlight and started going through boxes of files. Most of it was boring stuff. Wildlife counts, water levels, visitor reports. But then I found something that made my stomach drop. A folder marked Military Training, 1969, classified. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were photos, reports, and maps. All about a 2-week training operation in Big Cypress. All about my unit. The first photo showed soldiers in gas masks, spraying orange liquid from tanks. I recognized some of the faces, even behind the masks. There was Rodriguez, my sergeant. There was Jimmy Patterson from Alabama. And there in the back was me. We looked so young, so stupid. The report said we were testing chemical defoliation methods in controlled environment, but that was just fancy words for poisoning the swamp. We sprayed Agent Orange on hundreds of acres, killing plants and animals to see how well it worked. The worst part was a memo from some army doctor. It said the chemicals would break down in a few years and everything would go back to normal. But it also said they weren't sure what would happen to animals that drank the poisoned water. Some genetic changes possible, the memo said. Monitor for unusual behavior or physical changes in local wildlife. They knew. They knew the chemicals might change the animals, and they did it anyway. I kept reading. There were reports from the months after we left. Rangers found dead fish floating in the water, birds falling out of trees, alligators acting strange, more aggressive than normal. But then the reports stopped. Just like that. No more dead animals, no more strange behavior, like someone told the rangers to stop writing reports. The last document in the folder was a letter from Washington. It said the whole training operation was now top secret. Anyone who talked about it would face court-martial. All evidence was to be destroyed, but they didn't destroy everything. They just hid it. I put the files back and drove home, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that creature in the water, those red eyes full of hate. What if it wasn't just angry about the chemicals? What if it remembered being poisoned? The next day, I went back to where I'd seen those red eyes. This time, I brought something with me, my old army manual about chemical weapons. I wanted to understand what we'd really done to this place. The manual was full of pictures and charts about different chemicals. Agent Orange, Agent Blue, Agent White, all designed to kill plants and make life impossible for the enemy. But there were warnings too. Warnings about what happened when people or animals got too much exposure, birth defects, cancer, genetic changes that could last for generations. I was reading about genetic mutations when I heard a splash behind me. I turned around and saw something that made my blood run cold. A fish was floating on the surface of the water, but it wasn't dead. It was moving, trying to swim. The problem was, it had too many fins. Way too many. They were sticking out all over its body like it couldn't figure out which way to go. As I watched, the fish sank back down into the dark water, but I could see other shapes moving down there. Lots of them. All wrong somehow. That's when I found the second set of barrels. These were buried deeper, covered with mud and plants. I had to dig with my hands to uncover them. More Agent Orange, more poison seeping into the water, but these barrels were different. They had a different symbol on them, something that looked like a skull with wings. I'd seen that symbol before in Vietnam. It meant biological weapons, not just plant killer, but something designed to hurt people and animals directly. My unit hadn't just been testing Agent Orange in 1969. We'd been testing other stuff too, stuff that was supposed to stay secret forever. I sat back in the mud, trying to remember. Those 2 weeks in Florida felt like a dream now, something that happened to someone else. But slowly, pieces started coming back. I remembered Rodriguez making us spray different chemicals in different areas. This one's for the trees, he'd say. This one's for the bugs. But there was a third type, something we only used in one small area deep in the swamp. This one's classified, Rodriguez had said. Don't ask questions, just spray it. We'd sprayed it right here, right where I was sitting now. The sun was getting low when I heard the sound again, that deep growling from somewhere in the swamp, but this time it sounded different. Less angry, more sad, like something crying. I stood up and looked around. The water was still, but I could feel something watching me. Not just watching, studying me, like it was trying to decide what to do with me. I know you're there, I said to the swamp. I know what we did to you. The growling stopped. We poisoned your home, I continued. We made you into something you weren't supposed to be, and I was part of it. Something moved in the water, not coming closer, just shifting position, listening. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I'm sorry for what we did to this place. I'm sorry for what we did to you. That's when I smelled it. Not just the chemical smell from the barrels, but something else. Something like rotten eggs mixed with that Agent Orange smell. It was coming from somewhere close by. I turned around and saw tracks in the mud, big tracks, like a man's feet but larger. And instead of 5 toes, there were 6. Each toe had a claw at the end. The tracks led away from the water and into the thick part of the swamp. Whatever made them was big, walked on 2 legs, and had been watching me for who knows how long. I followed the tracks for about 50 feet before they disappeared into an area where the ground was completely dead. No grass, no plants, nothing. Just black mud that smelled like chemicals and death. In the middle of this dead zone was something that made me stop and stare. It looked like a nest, but not made by any bird or animal I knew. It was made of metal pieces, old chemical barrels, and bones. Lots of bones. Some of the bones looked like they came from deer or alligators, but others looked different, bigger, like they came from something that had been changed by the chemicals, made into something new. As I stood there looking at this strange nest, I realized something that made my skin crawl. This wasn't just where the creature lived. This was where it was born. This was ground zero, the exact spot where we'd sprayed that classified chemical in 1969. We hadn't just poisoned an animal. We'd created something new. Something that had been growing and changing in this toxic swamp for over 10 years. And Now it was ready to come out of hiding. I backed away from the nest slowly, trying not to make any noise. But as I turned to leave, I saw something that made me freeze. More red eyes were watching me from the darkness. Not just 2 this time. 6, 8, maybe more. We hadn't created just one creature. We'd created a whole family of them. And they all looked very, very angry. I ran. I'm not proud of it, but I ran like a scared kid. Branches whipped at my face as I crashed through the swamp, trying to get back to my boat. Behind me, I could hear splashing in the water. Something big was following me. I made it to my boat and started the engine with shaking hands. As I pulled away from shore, I looked back and saw them. 3 huge shapes, standing in the shallow water, watching me go. Even from a distance, I could see their red eyes glowing in the darkness. I didn't stop driving until I got home. Then I locked every door and window, loaded my rifle, and sat in my kitchen with all the lights on. But I knew locks and lights wouldn't keep those things out if they really wanted to get me. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face going back to the swamp, not yet. Instead, I drove to the library in town and looked up everything I could find about strange animals in Big Cypress. Most of it was silly stuff, tourists claiming they saw Bigfoot, kids making up stories about monsters. But there were some reports that made my skin crawl. People talking about a creature that walked like a man but looked like a giant ape. They called it the skunk ape because of the terrible smell it gave off. The reports went back to the early 1970s, right after my unit left the swamp. Campers would find their tents torn apart and their food scattered around. Hunters would see huge footprints in the mud, and everyone who saw the creature said the same thing. It smelled like rotten eggs and chemicals. One report was from 1975. A family camping near where I'd found those barrels said they woke up in the middle of the night to a horrible smell. When they looked outside their tent, they saw a 9-foot-tall creature covered in dark fur. It was standing on 2 legs, looking right at them. But here's the scary part. The family said the creature's breath made them see things that weren't. There, the father started screaming about enemy soldiers attacking their campsite. The mother saw her dead brother standing next to the tent. Their little boy said he saw his house on fire. The creature watched them panic for a few minutes, then walked away into the swamp. The family packed up and left that same night. I closed the book and sat back in my chair. The creature's breath made people hallucinate. It made them see their worst fears, their worst memories, just like Agent Orange did to some soldiers in Vietnam. I had to go back to the swamp. I had to face whatever we'd created out there. This time, I went prepared. I brought my gas mask from Vietnam, the one I'd kept in my closet all these years. I also brought extra ammunition and a camera. If I was going to die, I wanted someone to know what really happened. The swamp was quiet when I got there. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, no frogs. It was like everything that could run away had already left. I put on my gas mask and walked back to the area where I'd found the nest. The chemical smell was stronger today, so strong I could taste it even through the mask. My eyes started watering and I felt dizzy. That's when I saw it. The creature was standing about 50 feet away next to a dead cypress tree. It was huge, maybe 9 feet tall like the report said. Dark brown fur covered its body, but the fur was patchy and falling out in places. Underneath, I could see skin that looked burned and scarred. Its face was the worst part. It looked almost human, but wrong. The eyes were too big and too red. The mouth was full of yellow teeth that were too sharp, and when it breathed, green gas came out of its nose and mouth. We stared at each other for a long moment. I raised my rifle, but I didn't shoot. Something in its eyes stopped me. It wasn't just anger I saw there. It was sadness, deep, terrible sadness. The creature took a step toward me, then another. I could hear its breathing now, heavy and wet, like someone with really bad pneumonia. With each breath, more of that green gas came out. "Stay back," I said, though I don't know if it could understand me. I don't want to hurt you. It tilted its head, like it was trying to figure out what I'd said. Then it opened its mouth and let out a sound that made my blood run cold. Not a roar or a growl. It sounded like crying, like someone crying for help. That's when the gas hit me. Even with the mask on, some of it got through. Suddenly I wasn't in the Florida swamp anymore. I was back in Vietnam, in that village we burned down. I could smell the smoke, hear the screaming, feel the heat from the flames. I saw the woman with the baby again. She was running toward me, begging me not to shoot. But in this vision, I could understand what she was saying. She was asking me to save her child. She was telling me they weren't soldiers, just farmers trying to survive. I dropped my rifle and fell to my knees. The guilt hit me like a truck. All these years, I'd been telling myself that we were just following orders, that we didn't have a choice. But we did have a choice. I had a choice, and I chose wrong. The creature walked closer, and the visions got worse. I saw every person I'd killed in Vietnam. I saw the village burning. I saw children running through the flames, and I understood that the woman with the baby wasn't the only innocent person who died that day. We'd killed everyone. Old people, children, mothers, fathers, people who'd never hurt anyone in their lives. I was crying now, big ugly sobs that shook my whole body. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." The creature stopped right in front of me. I could feel its breath on my face, hot and toxic. But instead of killing me, it did something I never expected. It sat down. We stayed like that for maybe 10 minutes, me crying and the creature just watching. Slowly, the visions faded away. I was back in the swamp, but I felt different, empty, like something heavy had been lifted off my chest. I looked up at the creature. Up close, I could see the intelligence in its eyes. This wasn't just some dumb animal. It was smart, maybe as smart as a person, and it was in pain. "You remember, don't you?" I said. "You remember what it was like before we poisoned you?" The creature made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. "You were probably just a regular animal once, maybe a bear or something like that. Then we came and sprayed our chemicals all over your home. We changed you into this." It nodded, actually nodded like it understood every word. "And now you're all alone, the only one of your kind." It shook its head and pointed deeper into the swamp. Then it held up 3 fingers, then 5. Then it kept counting, but I lost track. There were more of them, a lot more. "How many?" I asked. The creature stood up and walked over to a patch of mud. With one claw, it drew marks in the dirt, lines and circles, like it was trying to write something. I counted the marks, 23 creatures living in the swamp. 23 animals that we'd turned into monsters with our chemicals. "What do you want?" I asked. The creature looked at me for a long moment. Then it pointed at me, then at itself, then made a gesture across its throat. It wanted me dead, but not just dead. It wanted justice. It wanted me to pay for what I'd done to it and its family. I understood. If someone had poisoned my home and turned me into a monster, I'd want justice too. I picked up my rifle and stood up. "Okay," I said, "I get it, but I'm not going down without a fight." The creature tilted its head again, like it was confused. "I'll fight you," I said. "One-on-one. If you win, you get your justice. If I win..." I stopped. What would I win? The right to keep living with the guilt? The right to keep having nightmares about dead children? If I win, nothing changes. I finished. I'll still be a killer. You'll still be a monster, but at least one of us will get what we deserve. The creature stood up slowly. It was even bigger than I'd thought, with arms that looked like they could snap me in half. But it nodded, like it accepted my challenge. Then it opened its mouth and breathed out a cloud of green gas, so thick I couldn't see through it. The real fight was about to begin. The green gas burned my eyes even through the mask. I stumbled backward, trying to get away from the cloud, but it followed me like it was alive. My head started spinning, and I could taste metal in my mouth. The creature moved through the gas like it didn't bother it at all. I could see its dark shape getting closer. I raised my rifle and fired 3 shots into the cloud. The bullets hit something solid, but the creature just grunted and kept coming. Then its huge hand grabbed my rifle and crushed it like it was made of paper. I pulled out my knife, the same one I'd carried in Vietnam. The blade was still stained with old blood that wouldn't wash off. The creature saw the knife and made that crying sound again. But this time it sounded angry. It swung at me with one massive arm. I ducked and slashed with the knife, cutting a line across its chest. Black blood came out of the wound, but it didn't seem to hurt the creature much. The creature grabbed me by the shirt and lifted me off the ground. Its face was inches from mine now. I could see the pain in its red eyes, the sadness mixed with rage. This thing had been suffering for years, and it blamed me. It was right to blame me. "Do it," I said. "Finish me off." But instead of killing me, it threw me into the mud about 10 feet away. I landed hard and felt something crack in my ribs. When I looked up, the creature was just standing there watching me. It didn't want to just kill me. It wanted me to understand something first. The creature walked over to one of the old chemical barrels and pointed at it. Then it pointed at itself. Then it made that crying sound again, but softer this time, like it was trying to tell me a story. "You were here when we sprayed the chemicals," I said. "You were just a regular animal, living your life." The creature nodded. "And the chemicals changed you, made you into this." It nodded again, then held up one finger, then 2. Then it kept counting, showing me how many others had been changed. Like it was. "Your whole family," I whispered. "We poisoned your whole family." The creature's shoulders started shaking. It was crying. This huge, terrifying monster was crying like a lost child. I understood then this wasn't about revenge. This was about grief. The creature had watched its family get sick and change into monsters. It had been alone and confused and in pain for over 10 years, and the worst part was it remembered what life was like before. I stood up slowly, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "I can't bring them back," I said. "I can't undo what we did, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again." The creature tilted its head, listening. I walked over to the chemical barrels. They were still leaking, still poisoning the water. "These have to be destroyed," I said. "All of them, so no more animals get hurt." I pulled out my emergency flares, the kind rangers carry in case they get lost. The creature watched as I cracked one open. Bright red fire shot out of the end. "This stuff is flammable," I said, pointing at the leaking chemicals. "If we light it up, it'll burn hot enough to destroy everything. No more poison, no more mutations." The creature looked at the flare, then at the barrels, then at me. It seemed to understand what I was planning. "But we'll both die," I said. "The explosion will be huge. There's no getting away from it." The creature thought about this for a moment. Then it did something that surprised me. It smiled. Not a mean smile, but a sad, tired smile, like someone who was ready to rest. It walked over and sat down next to the biggest pile of barrels. Then it looked at me and nodded. "You're sure?" I asked. It nodded again, then patted the ground next. "To it." I walked over and sat down beside the creature. We were both quiet for a minute, just sitting there like 2 old friends. It was strange, but I wasn't scared anymore. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. "What was your name?" I asked. "Before all this happened, did you have a name?" The creature made a soft sound, like wind blowing through trees. I decided to call it Wind. "My name's Tony," I said. "I'm sorry we never got to meet before we ruined everything." Wind made that soft sound again. Then it reached over and gently took the flare from my hand. Its claws were sharp, but it was careful not to hurt me. "You want to do it?" I asked. Wind nodded. This was its home, its family, its choice. I closed my eyes and thought about the village in Vietnam, but this time, instead of remembering the fire and the screaming, I remembered something else. Before we attacked, I'd seen children playing in the dirt outside their huts. They were laughing, chasing chickens, just being kids. They'd been happy before we came. Wind had been happy too, before we poisoned its world. "I'm ready," I said. Wind looked at me one more time. In its eyes, I didn't see anger anymore. I saw forgiveness. Somehow, this creature that had every reason to hate me had found a way to forgive me. Maybe that was enough. Wind held the flare up high, the red fire reflected in its eyes, making them look almost human. Then it said something that sounded like words, though I couldn't understand them, but I felt like it was saying goodbye. "Goodbye, Wind," I said. The creature lowered the flare toward the leaking chemicals. For just a second, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into fire. The heat hit me first, hotter than anything I'd ever felt. Then came the light, brighter than the sun. I heard Wind make one last sound, not crying this time, but something that sounded almost like singing. The chemicals burned blue and green and orange, colors that shouldn't exist in fire. The flames reached up toward the sky like they were trying to touch the clouds. Everything metal melted, everything alive burned. But as the fire wrapped around me, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. I felt clean. Like all the bad things I'd done were burning away with everything else. The last thing I saw was Wind's face in the flames. It wasn't scary anymore. It looked peaceful, like it was finally going home. Then everything went white, and I couldn't see anything at all. But I could still think. I could still feel. And somehow I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something much worse. I woke up, but I wasn't alive. I could see everything, but I didn't have eyes. I could think, but I didn't have a brain. I was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It took me a while to understand what had happened to me. I was part of the swamp now. The explosion had killed my body, but somehow my mind got trapped in the poisoned ground. I could feel every drop of contaminated water, every grain of toxic soil. I was connected to all of it, like I was the swamp's nervous system. And I could see what the chemicals were still doing. Even though Wind and I had destroyed those barrels, there were more, lots more, buried deeper in the swamp. The army had been dumping chemicals here for years, not just during our training. Tons and tons of poison, all slowly leaking into the water. The worst part was, I could see the future. I watched a pregnant deer drink from a stream that looked clean but was full of chemicals. Months later, her baby was born with 2 heads. Both heads tried to eat at the same time, but they fought each other. The little deer died after 3 days of suffering. I saw a family of raccoons find fish in a pond that seemed safe. The fish were full of poison, and the raccoons got sick. Their babies were born without fur, with skin that burned in the sunlight. They spent their short lives hiding in dark places, always in pain. I watched birds build nests in trees that had soaked up chemicals from the ground. Their eggs hatched, but the baby birds had wings that didn't work right. They couldn't fly, couldn't escape when predators came for them, and I couldn't warn any of them. I could only watch and feel their pain as if it was my own. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the people. Families still came to camp in the preserve. They thought it was safe because the government had cleaned it up, but the government was lying. They'd just moved the warning signs and pretended everything was fine. I watched a little girl splash in water that looked crystal clear. Her parents didn't know that the chemicals in that water would give her cancer when she turned 15. I knew, but I couldn't tell them. I saw a boy catch a fish that looked perfectly normal. He was so proud, showing it to his dad. But that fish was full of poison that would make the boy's own children sick 20 years later. I knew, but I couldn't warn him. A young couple got married in a beautiful spot, right over where the worst chemicals were buried. They thought it was the most romantic place in the world. They didn't know their future children would be born with hearts that didn't work right, with lungs that couldn't breathe properly. I knew, but I was powerless to stop it. Year after year, I watched more people get poisoned. Decade after decade, I saw the chemicals spread farther through the water system. The poison reached other swamps, other rivers, other places where people lived and played, and I felt it all. Every birth defect, every cancer, every child who died too young because of chemicals we'd buried in the ground. Their pain was my pain. Their suffering was my punishment. I tried to scream, but I had no voice. I tried to move, but I had no body. I was trapped, forced to watch and feel and know about every terrible thing that was happening because of what I'd done. The years blended together. 1985, 1990, 2000, 2010. The chemicals kept spreading. The mutations kept happening. The people kept getting sick. Sometimes I saw wind. Its spirit was trapped here too, just like mine. But wind had found a kind of peace. It had forgiven me, and that forgiveness had set it free from the anger. Wind could rest between the horrible visions, could find moments of quiet. But I couldn't rest. I was the one who had sprayed the chemicals. I was the one who had chosen to follow orders instead of doing what was right. This was my fault, and I had to witness every consequence. I watched scientists come to study the area. They found some of the contamination, but not all of it. They wrote reports that got buried in government files. They tried to warn people, but their bosses told them to keep quiet. The cover-up continued, just like it had in Vietnam, just like it always did. I saw soldiers who had served with me get sick and die from the chemicals we'd been exposed to. Their families never knew why they got cancer so young, why their children had problems. The government said it wasn't connected to military service. But I knew the truth. I watched the Vietnamese people we'd poisoned with Agent Orange, whole. Generations of children born with defects because of what we'd done. Their parents begged for help, for medicine, for someone to admit what had happened to them. But mostly, they were ignored. The chemicals we'd made were still killing people on the other side of the world, and I felt every death. By 2020, the contamination had spread far beyond Big Cypress. It was in the drinking water of 3 counties. It was in the fish that people ate, the crops they grew, the air they breathed. And I was connected to all of it. Every sick child, every dying animal, every poisoned acre of land. I felt it all, like it was happening to my own body. The scientists had a name for what was happening. They called it environmental persistence. That was their fancy way of saying the poison would never go away. It would keep spreading, keep killing, keep causing mutations for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. I was going to be trapped here, watching and feeling and knowing for longer than human civilization had existed, and every day would bring new suffering that I was responsible for. That's when I understood the real horror. This wasn't just punishment for what I'd done. This was punishment for what all of us had done. Every soldier who followed orders without asking questions, every scientist who stayed quiet when they should have spoken up, every politician who cared more about money than people's lives. We'd created a world where poison could be dumped and forgotten, where people could be lied to and abandoned, where suffering could be hidden and ignored. And now I was part of that world forever. A witness to every consequence, every victim, every lie. Sometimes, in the darkest moments, I tried to find comfort in the thought that maybe this was justice. Maybe I deserved this. Maybe this was what had to happen to balance out all the pain I'd caused. But then I'd see another innocent child get sick, another animal born twisted and wrong, and I'd know that justice wasn't the point. The point was that some mistakes can never be fixed. Some poisons never go away. Some suffering never ends. I was the methane prophet now, cursed to know the future but powerless to change it. And the future I saw was full of more poison, more lies, more death. The chemicals would keep spreading. The government would keep covering it up, and I would keep watching and feeling and knowing about every single victim, forever. That's my story. That's how I became part of the swamp, part of the poison, part of the endless cycle of contamination and death. And if you've listened this far, if you've heard my warning, then maybe you understand why I had to tell it. Because somewhere right now, there are more chemicals being buried, more lies being told, more people being poisoned by decisions made, in secret by people they'll never meet. And unless someone speaks up, unless someone breaks the cycle, there will be more spirits like me, trapped in poisoned ground, forced to watch the consequences of what we've done. The chemicals are still out there. The poison is still spreading, and I'm still watching.